Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1387 of the War News stream. And we have even more big news tonight. We have seen that NATO's declared a warning to prepare for war in Europe, as they say that Russia is preparing to launch a war on Europe. We've also seen that Russia's threatened to strike British troops in Ukraine, and also the Japan-China situation is escalating out of control and to an inflection point. And we have very big news from around the world, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of significant news from around the world, as we have heard major news today emerging from multiple areas of the world. Starting with our first story, we were able to hear that the NATO General Secretary, Mark Rutte, or Secretary General specifically, has actually stated today that there is credible information to show that the Russian Federation is preparing and considering Europe to be their next target after the war in Ukraine. And for this matter, the NATO alliance must take every available measure possible while there is time left to be able to prepare for the inevitable war that will be created with the Russian Federation, whether the West wants it or not. Lithuania has approved finalized details for the purchases of Leopard 2A7 and Leopard 2A8 main battle tanks, which will be the first main battle tanks within the Lithuanian Ministry of Defense and the Lithuanian Armed Forces. Additionally, Europe is apparently about to be taking reciprocal action against Belgium if they do not begin to liquidate Russian assets against the wishes of the entirety of the European Union, which has voted that the financial assets that have been seized from the Russian Federation at the start of the conflict are to be liquidated, the value of which is around $180 billion, to be able to help assist and fund the continued operations of the Ukrainian armed forces in the current war. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians have also conducted significant strikes inside the Russian Federation overnight, with major hits being seen in Smolensk, Tver, and also Yaroslavl, which houses one of the largest oil refineries in the Russian Federation in terms of barrels of usable fuel product output. output. Additionally, in a shocking upset, the Ukrainians have also attacked the largest oil rig in the Caspian Sea operated by Lukoil. From what we understand, the oil rig is out of operation at the moment as firefighting efforts are underway, and it does appear that this may be another critical blow to the Russian financial sector, primarily through their resource extraction. Speaking of which, the picture of that does not look quite well. According to information that's coming out from economic analysts, there are going to be incredibly difficult times ahead as the Russian economy is quite truly going to be grinding to a stop sometime towards the end of next year or sometime in the very early part of 2027. Additionally, we have also heard that elsewhere around the world, there have been more significant developments in the Thailand-Cambodia war, with both sides continuing to conduct significant firefights today along most areas of the border, and the Thai Air Force is now conducting major airstrikes throughout larger regions of the northern part of Cambodia, including a strike on an oil depot, and also additional actions that were taken against a T-55 armored column, apparently comprised of an entire T-55 tank company, with the entire company being wiped out by the Thai Air Force. Additionally, other artillery pieces, such as the BM-21 Grads, have also been destroyed by the Thai Air Force over the course of the day. In the midst of all this, the Thai have also announced that due to a decree of the King of Thailand, the Kingdom of Thailand's parliament is to be dissolved in the midst of the ongoing conflict, but the current Prime Minister has pledged that this will not stop the ongoing conflict with Cambodia, and that Thai armed forces will continue their efforts and actions even in the midst of the government dissolving inside of Thailand, which will be reformed soon after. Tensions between the People's Republic of China and the state of Japan are also running wildly high today as well, with the United States of America, for the first time, at least conducting some action in support of the Japanese government, with a B-52H Stratofortress joining several Japanese F-16s in a show of force in the East China Sea. Additionally, just moments ago, another 6.5 magnitude earthquake has actually rocked the area around the northern island of Honshu and also Hokkaido. From what we understand, the Japanese self-defense forces have already been pre-deployed in the area due to the last earthquake that happened just 2 days ago, and are already going to be responding to the situation if any damage or any injury to civilians occurs within the area. Additionally, we've also heard that the Japanese are building a significant island defense network south of Okinawa on the Japanese island chains that are under sovereign Japanese control, once again showing that tensions are running quite high between the two nations, and Japan seems to be taking every precaution and step necessary to not only be able to show that they are prepared to fight the Chinese if it comes down to it, but to also show that they are taking concerted steps to defend their own sovereignty and the sovereignty of the islands and territory of the state of Japan. Additionally, we have also seen elsewhere around the world, inside the hunt for Captain Craig Sparrow, that the Maduro government apparently is okay with Maduro fleeing the country, at least according to some rumored reports of offers that Maduro has given. Maduro is apparently willing to accept exile in Belarus if the United States of America will be happy with that. We have not been able to hear if the United States is going to be happy with that or not, and at least based off of all prior responses that the U.S. has given to Venezuelan offers, the answer is most likely going to be no. The United States of America is continuing to move more forces into the area, as the Vermont Air National Guard is now going to be deploying their F-35s from Vermont and into the area of the Roosevelt Roads Naval Station. I guess you could say they're going to be getting that cheese like they're from Vermont. We've also heard that the United States Navy is going to be conducting more seizures of oil tankers that are apparently dodging or violating sanctions, effectively creating a blockade, and largely confirming that last night the analysis was generally correct that if the United States started to state an intent to seize more vessels, this was going to become an effective blockade. Meanwhile, the vessel that was seized just yesterday is currently heading north near the area of Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and is apparently heading towards the United States of America, either to the southeastern coast or into the Gulf, one or the other. We have significant and major news coming from quite literally the entirety of the globe once again today. And as many of y'all know, we are going to be making sure to get through the news from the largest stories first, and getting on into the smaller stories as we make our way through the news through the night. And so, of course, folks, it's time for us to move on into our first and largest story of the day, which will take us to Berlin in Germany, as we did hear statements from the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, today that clearly indicates that the NATO alliance has credible information and intelligence to confirm that the Russian Federation is preparing for an inevitable war with NATO at this point. This has been something that many people have been talking about, and we've been talking about this quite extensively on the channel for some time, as it does appear that it may be some sort of a Russian drastic last-ditch play or effort to be able to try and get some significant concessions in the Ukraine war, and not only that, significant concessions for the Russian Federation overall. I'll actually read you all the transcript here and then show you all the short 10-second clip that we actually have of Mark Rutte as he made the statement. Here are some of the direct quotes that Mark Rutte made in his statements at the NATO conference in Berlin. We are Russia's next target. We must shift to a wartime mindset. Ukraine must have what it needs to defend itself, and Russia is losing 1,200 soldiers a day. If Putin is willing to sacrifice ordinary Russians like this, what is he prepared to do to us? 80% of critical components in Russian drones and missiles are made in China. China is a lifeline for the current Russian war industry and the Russian Federation at large. Russia could be ready to use military force against NATO within 5 years, and conflict is at our doorstep. We must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured. Once again,
Honestly, that's some of the most pointed statements that Rutte has made probably during his entire tenure so far. He's made statements before telling NATO to prepare for war, but to say that we are Russia's next target, meaning that he's saying get ready for war, it is definitely coming. I mean, that's a very pointed statement right there. Also, by the way, notice at the top right there, he had mentioned something about China supporting critical components to Russia. 80%. That's a crazy number right there. We've been saying that for a while, that China must be shipping weapons through North Korea all the way to Russia, through the land border, or even directly to Russia at some point or another. So 80%, I mean, China is basically building the missiles and drones for Russia based on that information.
It really is seeming like China is pretty much becoming the war industry for the Russian Federation. But before we even talk about this further, I do want to play this short 10-second clip of Mark Rutte saying one of the key statements that we just read off in his own words, so that we all can see that this is actually what he said. Here's the statement.
Russia has brought war back to Europe, and we must be prepared for the scale of war our grandparents and great-grandparents endured.
Once again, clearly making it obvious that the Europeans and really the entirety of the NATO alliance is having to prepare for what will become the Third World War at some point in the future. I've seen many people who bring up this question every time we come around onto this topic, asking the age-old question, why in the world will the Russian Federation go to war with NATO when they can't even take on Ukraine and even have a semblance of winning at all against a country that was never known for any sort of military prowess historically in the modern day and age? And that is because of a little bit of a caveat. Russia does not have to win a conventional war on the ground to be able to get significant, substantial gains against the Western sphere and our alliance. The Russian Federation cannot win or sustain a conventional war to any degree. It's become incredibly clear in Ukraine that that certainly is the case, and against NATO, that would definitely be even more so the case, as the conventional armed forces of NATO, if we're including the United States of America, is enough to completely obliterate the Russians. If we're just talking about the Europeans, it's enough to completely obliterate the Russians. So either way, the Russians are screwed whether the United States is involved or not. The issue, however, is that the Russian Federation is a nuclear-armed state, and according to the figures that we have at least publicly, Russia is the second most nuclear-armed country on the planet, only second to the United States of America. The French Republic and the United Kingdom also have nuclear weaponry, with several hundred warheads apiece, mostly strategic, but what we have to understand is that in a modern war, the conventional war is only the appetizer to the threat of a nuclear war, especially with the current Russian strategy that we would understand. If Russia starts a conflict, they are going to be the ones who have the attacker's advantage and the element of surprise. This means that they will be able to make significant gains of ground within the first opening days of a conflict, and hopefully, at least for their strategic sake, try and capture key areas and passageways in the NATO alliance to be able to try and make the defensive and then counteroffensive situation in NATO far more difficult. This could include a seizure of the Suwalki Gap and also a crossing of the Narva Bridge on the Narva River heading into Estonia. If those two crossings are successfully made, or those two captures are successfully made by the Russian army, they are besieging the Baltics effective immediately at that point. Not only that, but Russian submarines from the Baltic Sea Fleet, based out of Kronstadt Island at St. Petersburg, have been conducting significant operations within the Baltic Sea, according to the Swedish Navy. This is also giving us a very strong indicator that the Russian Federation would use their diesel-electric Kilo-class submarines amongst their many other nuclear attack submarines to be able to conduct supply interdiction for ships that would be attempting to reach ports like Klaipeda, Riga, and also Tallinn inside the Baltic states, making resupply in any larger volume incredibly difficult, and once again putting the Baltic states on an island on their own. Either airlifts would have to be conducted by NATO states to be able to get forces into the area along with supplies, or we would just have to hope that the Baltic states could hold out while NATO forces marched into Kaliningrad and through the Suwalki Gap to break the siege and to relieve the Baltic states, which would be besieged for an unlimited period of time until we were able to break the siege at Kaliningrad and the Suwalki Gap. That is the actual strategic situation that would exist at least at that moment. So three nations, three independent sovereign states would actually be within the possible clutches of a Russian victory at that point. Once we start to conduct a counterattack specifically into Kaliningrad or into the Russian Federation's territory directly, the Russian Federation could threaten nuclear reprisal either in the form of a tactical level nuclear reprisal or a strategic level nuclear exchange, which would be practical Armageddon, against the West to try and get some form of significant concessions. At that point, our hands are tied, and we have to generally try and guess whether the Russians are bluffing or not, and they might not be. So then at that
I wonder if that strategy right there would actually be supported by, let's say, Russia's allies like China, because you got to think about the precedent that would set. If Russia decides to actually follow through, and it sounds like they plan on doing it in the coming years, according to NATO, if they follow through with attacking a NATO state, like let's say a Baltic state, and then they use the nuclear threat as a way to say, United States, you better not interfere with our invasion of the Baltics. If you do, we will nuke you. Would China support that? Because, I mean, that's setting a very dangerous precedent. The United States could also adopt that exact same mindset and start invading on China's interests, basically, and doing the exact same thing. And then what does China do? They're going to be in the exact same predicament that the U.S. would be in with Russia. So I'm not sure how many people would actually support that. That would be basically a version of political seppuku, I guess you could call it, for a lack of better words.
It would definitely would be, but it still, once again, folks, is a fairly strong leverage that the Russians could try and use. And I see some people saying the Russian military sucks, and I think you're missing the point. It doesn't matter if the military is good or not. It just matters that they can start a ground war and then threaten to nuke us, and then say, look, we can nuke you all, and we're obviously going to get nuked back, and we're all going to die, but do you want to die over this little strip of land? Maybe you want to negotiate with us. And then we go to the negotiating table because we're scared of their nuclear arms. That's the actual goal that they're going for with this kind of strategy that we're seeing right now. And this isn't one that's fictitious. We're about to get into developments in the Russian Federation from just today and yesterday that are making it incredibly clear they are preparing forces to be able to conduct a ground war against NATO right now. That's going to happen at some point in the future. If Putin stays alive and in power of the Russian government, this is an inevitable certainty at this point, within the next 5 years at a minimum. But I also have to add, folks, that everyone has to remember, when we're talking about this situation here, it does not matter how bad the Russian army is. It does not matter how poorly trained they are, how poorly equipped they are, and how bad the economic situation is in Russia. For one, this is going to be an incredibly short-term campaign if Russia conducts it. They know that they won't be able to last that long. So the escalatory ladder would last for maybe 2 weeks or a month. It's not going to be that long of a conflict, because either we're going to be in a nuclear exchange by that point, and the ground forces conventionally really won't matter too much, or this is going to have ended by 2 weeks to a month after it started. Secondly, we also have to remember that as far as competency isn't an issue, because once again, this is going to be over an incredibly short period of time. As long as they're able to march into an area that doesn't have NATO troops directly within it, like the Suwalki Gap or crossing the Narva Bridge, they will be able to take that ground and then try and attempt to hold it. At that point, it's just a matter of throwing enough bodies inside of that area of control to try and make sure that NATO can't just completely wipe out the Russian forces there and then push on through. The third thing is that the Russian economy also will not matter with how bad off it's going as well, because once again, we're working on an incredibly short timetable. This isn't a war in Ukraine like a war of attrition. With this sort of a strategy, it once again is only going to be lasting about 2 weeks to a month. And here's why it will only last 2 weeks to a month. Russia knows that the conventional army in a conventional war will lose. There is no question about that. Putin's been admitting that the entire time he's been the president of the Russian Federation. You can even find clips of him saying that as far back as 2014 and 2012. He has known this forever, that the Russian army conventionally will not be able to withstand the West, NATO, or the United States. Because of that, they know that they will have to advance and take the ground instantly. Once any NATO actions are conducted, like a counterattack, to either start pushing into Kaliningrad or break through the Suwalki Gap, or to relieve the forces inside of the Baltic states, the Russians are immediately going to escalate to tactical nuclear warfare, or threats of tactical nuclear warfare on the negotiating table. They are most likely going to start calling up departments like the U.S. Department of Defense and telling them, look, if you do not stop this counterattack right now, we are going to start launching tactical nuclear weapons at U.S. forces, and NATO forces for that matter, in the area, to leverage the playing field. Then at that point, folks, here's the issue that we're faced with on a negotiating level, or as far as the strategic level is concerned. If the Russians are bluffing, we can continue to counterattack, and they might back off and the whole thing might crumble. And that's a gamble that we can take. But on the flip side, they also might not be gambling, and they might actually start lobbing tactical nuclear weapons at NATO forces in the Baltics and also in Poland. If they do that, Pandora's box has been opened at that point. We will also, at that point, by our doctrine, will have to use tactical nuclear weapons against them. We're going to see that this will become a nuclear war if the Russians are not bluffing on this. So for that reason, that's the sort of game plan that we're seeing, and that's also why, folks, the Russian Federation actually can pull off a war strategy like this without their ground forces having to be the best, sharpest, and most competent. They can be completely incompetent, and this plan still will work. But we're actually getting breaking news coming out at this moment. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's hold off on our news for just a second out of Ukraine and Russia. We've got something potentially massive happening right now on the Korean Peninsula. I just saw on Flight Radar 24, and also thank you to the folks in the chat who told me this, there was a U.S. Army Apache helicopter that crossed the border, at least according to what we have on ADSB, and apparently, according to what we saw on the radar, was going into North Korea right now. The call sign of the helicopter was Mercs 12. And unless that was an ADSB error, it's disappeared from the system at this point. But unless it was an error, it looks like an Apache might have just gone into North Korean airspace right now. I'm not really sure if we can take that at face value. That would be a massive event to happen. But I saw it, like before it disappeared, I saw the thing literally. It was about a mile or two into North Korean airspace, at least on ADSB.
Unfortunately, folks, I wouldn't be able to show you all that because I just went and looked at Flight Radar 24, and if it is in North Korea, the transponder is off at the moment. But we're not entirely sure if that's accurate information or not. That might have been GPS spoofing, or it may have been an incorrect marking of a transponder on the map. But a fairly interesting sort of an occurrence to hear of nonetheless. And if we can try and get any further information or developments on that, we will make sure to get you all updated on that.
Yeah. It appeared to be going north. And once again, folks, it could be GPS spoofing. It could be something like that that's causing a fake signal to go out and maybe it's being mislocated. But based on what I saw, though, I mean, I'd be surprised if it was flying anywhere close to the border. That would be kind of wild for it to be flying anywhere close to it. But it looked like it was heading north toward Pyongyang, it looked like. It appears like it's disappeared. It turned its transponder off at this point. But it was heading in the exact direction of the capital. So I'm not sure what to make of that. My initial reaction is it must be some type of error because, you know, why would we send one Apache over the border in North Korea? But I've never seen that happen before pretty much ever.
I haven't heard of that either, but we'll be trying to keep an eye on that, folks. We don't have a lot of information on at the moment, but it might be a spoof or it might be an accurate transponder. But getting back to our current news at the moment and back into the major news coming out of Europe, it does appear that a lot of people have been talking about the significant developments that have been happening in this situation, and also the fact that NATO is once again talking about not the possibility, but the inevitability of a war with the Russian Federation, and that is pretty much a guaranteed certainty at this point. It really isn't a matter of if, it's more so a matter of when. And a lot of people have been actually talking in the chat about when this is going to happen within the next 5 years, considering that the NATO Secretary General said that this is guaranteed going to be happening, according to current intelligence, within the next 5 years at a minimum. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So we did hear in our Ukraine news, of course, that the NATO chief is now warning to prepare for a major war as Europe is allegedly Russia's next target, according to the NATO chief. And what are your thoughts? 47%, the majority, or not the majority, but the most people say it will happen in the next 1 to 2 years that Russia will attack a NATO state, while 28% said this is all hype talk and Russia will not attack Europe, and 16% said it will happen in the next 2 to 5 years. So we've been saying, both of us have been saying this on the channel, by the way, that it is very likely that either way it goes, if Russia takes Ukraine, they're still going to attack NATO because they'll be emboldened at that point. And if they can't take Ukraine, they're going to attack NATO anyway because Putin is delusional and also he's a lunatic and he's going to lash out for not being able to achieve his war aims, because if he loses Ukraine and looks like an idiot, which at this point he's already looking like that, but he'll look like a bigger idiot if he loses Ukraine, then he'll try to have to basically save face at that point by doing something stupid like invading a Baltic state. So I'm going to say I'm with the 47%. I think it's going to happen in the next 1 to 2 years. And also another thing is the Russian economy is still collapsing. And while it still hasn't collapsed yet, it is literally on the trajectory to collapse. So it's going to happen eventually. It's just being delayed temporarily because China is helping them out a bit, but it's still going to collapse eventually. So I would say desperation will set in. In the next 1 to 2 years, we likely will see a Russian attack on NATO like the NATO chief is alluding to. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd agree with the 47%. I believe that it would happen within the next 1 to 2 years, most likely within the next year and a half, because from what we're guesstimating here on the channel, the Russian Federation can most likely only survive a year and a half. They are quite truly on the way out at this moment, and considering that they will not have any funds to continue to finance any operations of the government, much less a war, they'll have to try and kick this off while they still have some funding to work with. And so for that reason, it'll have to happen in an incredibly short amount of time, probably within the next year and a half, meaning that NATO actually has a fairly small time in a military sense to be able to prepare for the possibility, or inevitability more so, of a war with the Russian Federation. Some countries have already been on top of that and working as hard as they can in the direction of preparing for a war, with Lithuania being one of those primary countries. Lithuania and Poland are probably in the most important position currently within the NATO alliance due to both of the countries sharing a border within the Suwalki Gap. The Suwalki Gap is the most important part of the NATO alliance currently. It is the equivalent, from the Cold War era, of the Fulda Gap that existed within Germany and the open plains inside the German mountains that would allow for a Soviet armored advance to spearhead directly into Western Germany. This is practically serving the same geographical purpose in the modern day that the Fulda Gap served during the Cold War. If the Russian Federation was able to take this gap, the Baltic states are completely blockaded for land transportation of logistics and supplies by land, and all transports would have to come in by sea or be heavily embroiled and embattled area of Europe if a war was to break out. Russian air defenses could pose significant issues for air resupplies, and Russian submarines could also attempt to blockade any sort of naval resupplies and shipments that would be conducted to key Baltic ports like the port of Klaipeda, Riga, and also Tallinn, along with a couple of smaller other ports that exist along the coastline. This is, for that reason, the main priority as to why Lithuania and Poland have been building up and improving their armed forces abilities. Lithuania actually at the moment does not possess a single main battle tank within their armed forces. The German 52nd Panzer Brigade of the 10th Panzer Division is actually inside of Lithuania, which does have Leopard 2 A7s within its command, but the Lithuanians themselves do not have any main battle tanks of their own. As a matter of fact, Lithuania uses primarily a vehicle called the Vilkas, which is based off of the German Boxer IFV, but it has had some significant improvements built onto the Boxer everything vehicle. It has a rapid fire, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a 25mm or 30mm autocannon, along with 2 Spike ATGM launchers, which are incredibly effective. I'm also seeing that apparently some people are saying that we are lagging out or having audio issues, and I think that might be a YouTube issue, folks. Autocannon, along with 2 Spike ATGM launchers, which are incredible. Yeah, that seems to be a YouTube issue, so y'all might want to refresh, because I think that YouTube's going through some server issues. Our connection with OBS is fine, and also our audio is coming through just fine. Matthew, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you still.
Okay, good. So it appears that it's a YouTube issue. So please refresh me, folks, because I think that that's the issue at the moment. But moving on from that, Lithuania's Ministry of Defense has announced that they have finalized the details through their Ministry of Defense for the acquisition of Leopard 2A8 main battle tanks. The Leopard 2A8 is one of the most advanced. It is practically the most advanced variant that can be bought outside of Germany in the entirety of the world. The Leopard 2A8 actually has a significant amount of active protection systems on board. It actually does have a fully integrated APS system, which is very impressive for that matter. Most people have actually been heavily impressed by the Merkava Mark IV M's and LICs or LIVs that have been inside of the Gaza Strip, which are always equipped generally with some form of an active protection system, like a trophy. The Leopard 2A8 actually does have this system on board. Not only that, it does have the usual armament of the 120mm smoothbore cannon. It also has the 7.62 coaxial machine gun mounted directly alongside the main gun. It also has a 50 caliber autonomous machine gun on top, which can be remote controlled from inside the turret without requiring the loader or the gunner to have to exit the turret to be able to man the machine gun. It, of course, has the normal engine output and so on of any variety. But once again, this is a fairly significant purchase for the Lithuanians. From what we understand, all of their Leopard 2A8s will arrive by 2030. Which is quite unfortunate. That's 5 years from now. With the first locally assembled tank rolling out in early 2028. From what we know, they're actually going to be attempting to build an entirely separate division from their current division that they have right now, which is the Lithuanian 1st Division, which is the only standing division within their country. Lithuania is going to be shooting in the future to have 2 full divisions inside of their army, which means those will most likely be organized into some form of a corps command, although it'll be a fairly light corps at that. They finally will have a Corps Command level army within their country, and they will also finally have some armored brigades to be able to work with to provide heavier direct fire support to the infantry of the armed forces of Lithuania if a war is to ever break out. Unfortunately, the first time they'll ever have a Leopard 2A8 in their arsenal is going to be 2028, which at a minimum is about 3 years from now. So they will not be around in time for the actual war to break out, if there is one to break out with the Russian Federation, but Lithuania is still working on fleshing out and building up their armed forces as quickly as they possibly can. And it is a good thing to see that Lithuania, which is a linchpin of the alliance currently as far as the territory that they are currently sitting on, is still trying to work and prepare to put themselves in the best defensive and strategic position possible given the current situation. But moving on from that, we have also heard that Europe is apparently going to be taking reciprocal actions against the Kingdom of Belgium. Sorry, folks, I was just looking at the poll there and trying to figure out how to segue into that here in a second. But from what we understand, we apparently are hearing that the European Union is going to be apparently giving Belgium very similar treatment to Hungary if it doesn't back the complete liquidation of Russian assets that are currently held inside of Belgium. Hungary has largely been excluded from the EU in everything but name. Hungary is still a European Union member, but there is no intelligence sharing or really any sort of cooperation by other European Union states with the Republic of Hungary at this point. It appears that the Kingdom of Hungary is going to be going down the Kingdom of Belgium, correction, is going to be going down a very similar route at this moment if they continue to try and hold up and stop the liquidation of Russian assets to be able to fund the war in Ukraine. This is a fairly pressing issue considering that the European Union is trying to find a way to substantially increase the amount of support in funds, or more so in raw equipment, that the state of Ukraine is able to possess at any given moment to continue to fight the Russian Federation, and funding is, of course, the #1 priority to be able to get that equipment. Belgium is generally holding up the entire process at the moment because while all other European nations have largely voted to liquidate the Russian financial assets, the Belgians are stating that it's practical theft and that they will not follow through with such an action. So now the European Union is apparently going to be threatening reciprocal actions against the Kingdom of Belgium if they do not accept the demands of the rest of the European Union to start liquidating the assets to be able to continue to fund the war in Ukraine. More importantly, another interesting thing that was said by the NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte today, speaking of the ongoing developments in Europe in preparation for a possible war with the Russian Federation, we've actually heard that Mark Rutte has declared that 80% of all the parts inside of Russian missiles and drones were actually made in China, according to investigations of the debris that's been found from Russian impact sites throughout Ukraine. And this is starting to lead us to believe that China is more so the war industry of the Russian Federation, more so than the Russians even are themselves. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So, in a bombshell revelation today, the NATO chief did reveal that 80% of Russian missile and drone parts are apparently made in China, and that China is a major supplier of these parts. So, what are your thoughts about that? It looks like 77% said China is waging a full-scale proxy war against the West, while 9% said it seems like only dual-use goods that Russia is using to fight the war, and China is not necessarily sending them on purpose. And about 8% said China is not definitely supplying anything. They're not intentionally supplying, that Russia's just getting it through the black market or something like that. So, me personally, I've been saying this for a long time like a broken record. I strongly believe that China is not only militarily aiding Russia, they're also most likely economically aiding Russia as well, very secretly behind the scenes. And my guess is, this is my allegation, I think the U.S. has known about it for a long time, and they don't want to get into a direct conflict with China about this because we're not quite ready for a direct war with China, but they are probably providing tons of economic assistance and obviously tons of military aid to Russia. They are fighting a full-scale proxy war right now in Ukraine, and they're doing it, and that's how Russia's staying afloat. People ask the question all the time, well, y'all say all the time that Russia's about to collapse. How come they haven't? That's because, in my opinion, China's the one propping them up. Without China, like Root said today, Russia would not be able to fight this war right now. So I'm really not really sure how we can address that, because China is obviously a formidable force. We can't just say, China, stop that or else, because we can't get in a direct war with China. So our hands are kind of tied on this one. We can try to sanction China, which may or may not hurt them enough to actually make them stop. I'm not really sure what we can do about this, but I'm with the 76%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd agree with the 76% as well. China is waging a full-blown proxy war against the United States and really just the West, not really the United States at this point, inside of Ukraine by funding and supporting, or more so supporting the Russian Federation through their manufacturing capabilities. We've already seen in clear proof prior, which I think some people may have forgotten about, that in the city of Shenzhen here in southern China, there was actual video data that was stored on one of the Russian drones that was down due to electronic warfare interference in Ukraine that actually showed Chinese technicians operating the camera on board the drone while it was still in the factory in Shenzhen and checking to make sure that the camera on board the drone was working properly, so that way when they sent it off to Russia, the Russians wouldn't be coming back and asking for a refund. So quite clearly, they are already manufacturing Shahed 136s for the Russian Federation in mass production factories inside of Shenzhen. That's not even anything that's up to debate. That was literal video evidence that we got that was hardcore proof that the Chinese were manufacturing drones for the Russians. Now we also understand that according to additional investigations by the Ukrainians, they're now finding that most parts found in debris fields from Russian drone and missile explosions are showing that practically all of the parts were made in China. Hardly any of them were made in Russia, or anywhere else for that matter. So it does appear that the People's Republic of China is more so what's keeping the Russian war industry alive. This also is something a little bit more interesting in its own right, because it's also confirming that the Russian war industry, which was believed at some point to have been running somewhat well, we were believing that up until recently, it apparently doesn't even exist. It's apparently a ghost shell of industries that are pretending to operate and pretending to produce equipment and arms for the Russian armed forces, but in reality, they're actually getting the equipment primarily from China, especially in their deep strike abilities against the state of Ukraine. So for that reason, that's giving us a very large indicator that, one, the Russian war industry might also be dead as well, along with most other industries in Russia, and it's only the Chinese that are giving any form of a semblance that Russia is still alive and well in any economic measure, including in the war industry. So I would have to say this is a fairly interesting development, but there isn't really a lot that we can do in response. China is one of our largest trading partners, and doing anything against them could start to cause massive economic damage within the United States, which isn't just anything in the abstract. People are going to lose their jobs by the thousands or tens of thousands, or possibly even millions, if we completely cut off trade with China overnight. So unfortunately, because there's millions of Americans' jobs being held hostage here if we try and do anything extremely harsh against China, we can't do a lot without causing even further damage inside the United States to our own people. They would cause a lot of damage to the Chinese, don't be mistaken, but it also caused a lot of damage in the United States, which is a fairly difficult hurdle to get across because, you know, it's like if we're taking out China, but we're also blowing away one of our entire legs as a nation, was that really worth it? And I think some people could argue that probably isn't really worth it. Additionally,
also, by the way, Enforcer, if you're finished with your analysis there, I do have some more breaking news when you're ready.
oh, go ahead.
So right now we're seeing in South Korea, by the way, this is an update about the Korea situation. That there's still an ongoing situation, by the way. We can't determine if it was a GPS spoof that occurred that led an Apache to look like it was going across the North Korean border. Not really sure about that right now. But there's two different Apaches that have just shown up as well on ADSB data right now with the call signs Card 20 and Mercs 50. And one of them appears to be flying around the area. I'm trying to get the area real quick here. I'm trying to do this on the spot, which is a little bit tricky. It appears to be near Sejong, toward the western part of South Korea. And there's also one more that just disappeared from ADSB data as well. So something is going on in South Korea. We're really not sure if it's an exercise or what's going on, but there are many different Apaches flying around, turning their transponders on and off in different parts of South Korea. Once again, I want to reiterate, we cannot prove for a fact that an Apache actually went over the North Korean border. It looked like it. It showed it on ADSB that it crossed over into their airspace, but it could have been spoofing or maybe some type of GPS error that could have been causing it as well. So very curious to know what just happened with that. And also, considering the fact that there are many other Apaches in the sky right now in South Korea, it lends credence to the idea that something might be actually happening.
And it does appear that something might be happening. We'll try and keep an eye on that, folks. But at the moment, it's really hard to say anything rather than Apaches are popping up on transponders on flight radar and then turning off their transponders not that much longer after. So we'll be trying to keep an eye on that. But at the moment, not really much more to report rather than they're popping up and disappearing. But moving on from that, we do also have other significant news that came out of Hungary today, speaking of some European developments, as it actually appears that Viktor Orban is looking to assume the presidency and rewrite laws within the nation of Hungary to make the presidency the most powerful office in the country, a plan that is that the opposition is aware of inside the country. So it actually does appear that, like many people have been saying about Orban is actually trying to position himself to become a dictator of Hungary, a lot like Lukashenko is the dictator of Belarus, or Lukashenko more so, and also Putin is the quote-unquote president of the Russian Federation, although he runs the country with an iron fist and nobody can take him out of power. So it does appear that Orban is working on that at the moment. So I can't wait for the dictator of Hungary to sound like Gru. You know, he's going to get up there and go, "The protesters have no rights," or something like, you know, it's going to be something interesting to see there. So we'll have to wait and see.
He really is trying to become the next Orban, the fellow there in Belgium. He's trying to become the next one there. It's kind of weird how that works. Like these countries that seem to be Western aligned, when it comes down to it, when the rubber meets the road, basically, all of a sudden they start becoming cowards and chickens. It's like, also, I'm beginning to wonder if is it really just cowardice or is it more than that? Is there something more than meets the eye here than simply just being scared of Putin?
Maybe so. It's hard to say, but it does appear that Orban is going to be trying to consolidate power within Hungary to try and overturn the results of the next election if they're not in his favor. But moving on out of the nation of Hungary and on into the other significant news that we've been able to get through the day, we have also been able to hear of some other major developments that have happened actually directly inside the Russian Federation. And these were quite large to say the least. We did see that within Smolensk, significant air raids were occurring over the night, with video footage emerging of these air raids within the city of Smolensk. We can also see here as well the smoke rising over the building once again from a slightly shorter video taken from pretty much the same angle. These all look like duplicates, I'll be entirely honest with y'all, of the same videos over and over. But from what we understand, the strikes did happen somewhere around the Smolensk area, and we understand that this specific power plant at Smolensk was directly hit by Ukrainian drone attacks overnight. This is the Smolenskaya Tets 2 power plant, which actually does provide power to the larger area of the city of Smolensk, and also some of the surrounding towns and villages in the area. This hit could knock out the power grid within Smolensk for some time, once again confirming that another Russian city, another another major one at that within Western Russia, is now going to be going through another major energy blackout due to the Ukrainians hitting and directly damaging the power plant that provides power to the entire city of Smolensk. Additionally, we also saw within the city of Tver that there was an ongoing attack overnight by Ukrainian drones within Tver as well. And we actually got some pretty juicy clips on this one, so let's take a little gander.
No.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Russian rage. Oh, my God.
I think that guy just escaped an asylum or something like that, honestly, man. It's like, yo, you good? It's like, you all right? Let's listen to him again.
Jeez, man. This guy right here, put him in a straitjacket. This guy's a troublemaker.
Man, I think he probably is in a straight jacket somewhere in the background.
All right, bro, you need to chill out.
Man, he just said in perfect English, "It's a drone." Listen to him.
It's a drone? Down.
Man,
This guy is really crazy. He's speaking English off the top of the dome. He's kind of going nuts.
man, he sat there and said, "Yeah, it's a drone." Man, it's like, yeah, what the hell?
Yeah.
I gotta tell y'all, folks, people in Russia, I would be quite concerned to be around them in public. But we also get to see this clip as well. Oh, what's that noise? That sounds like a lawnmower. Lawn mowing it this early in the morning.
Oh, my God. Wow.
A mosquito impacted in the parking lot and caused an unfortunate event to my Ladomobile.
Well, well, well. What do we have here? But also, I like how this says right here at the end. Big shout out to the artist Niet Audio, which means no audio. Like, big shout out to that artist. Apparently, he's
Man,
working hard.
Russia's going so broke they don't even have audio anymore. They left the country.
Man, I like how they also have that beeline mobile data. Like, man, like, bro, they beelining it straight to bankruptcy in that country. They got to get that mobile data too. But moving on from that, we also got to see this other clip here. Oh. Like a Tom and Jerry routine here.
Oh, look, there were some bits and pieces of confetti falling down, too. It's like an instant celebration.
Man, some odds and ends, some bits and pieces, some bits and bobs.
That's Christmas flocking. Oh, look at this person. What the?
Man, he's
grabbing the camera.
Man, why in the world why did he know the camera was right there? He's like, oh shit, let me grab the camera. Like, it's like, man, this guy came around the corner, man. Dun, 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 dun. Bro, he's practicing that Russian ballet right here.
he came around the corner whimsical. He said, oh my, I left my camera.
Man, he sat there and said, la-di-da, la-di-da, whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop. Like, he's like, let me go get my camera. Oh, he just pushed on the pillar holding the camera, and then he wandered off. The camera is now in its self-destruct sequence. You can hear the ticking there.
Got oddly quiet right after that little event right there. A little smashing, silence. I guess everybody went back to sleep.
Oh, look, he's back.
Look at this guy.
He's not whimsical anymore.
he's like, he pulled himself, he composed himself. He said, oh man, I got caught looking whimsical. I got to calm down.
Yeah, bro. Let's go watch him again, man. Right, here he comes, all whimsical. Look at him go. Man, bro, you got the sound beat, man. But moving on from that, here's our last clip showing that the Russian police responded, and of course the spectator sport began. Man, people come pouring out in the thousands in Russia. Something got blown up? Why? This is the most interesting thing to happen all year. Man, Russia must be a boring place for a whole bunch of people to gather around something that just blew up, you know? Like, I wouldn't do that, me personally. I just drive by. But we also got to hear that just above the city, by a couple of miles, the leader of Armenia was actually stuck in the sky in the midst of the drone attack. Apparently, according to what we know, Pashinyan's plane got stuck over the city of Tver because there was nowhere safe to land last night in the drone attack, so they just had to sit there and conduct orbits for a couple of hours, waiting for a good moment to land. This is a fairly interesting sort of a story, so let me read off the details to y'all to get this dead on. The Armenian Prime Minister's aircraft circled over the Tver region for almost an hour, waiting for permission to land, and it finally managed to touch down at a backup airfield in Pulkovo, which is a little ways away from Moscow. Pashinyan's plane was flying to Moscow from Germany to attend a meeting of the EA-EU Intergovernmental Council. That night, the Moscow region experienced one of the largest drone attacks in recent weeks, really over the whole war. And explosions were heard in Zelenograd, Remenskoye, Odinsovo, and Dubna. All of those are suburbs in Moscow, by the way. 4 major Moscow airports, Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, owners of the Dimsdale Dimendome, Vuknovo, and Zhukovsky, were repeatedly put under restrictions. 200 flights were delayed. Very unfortunate. And sad to hear that the Republic of Armenia's plane had to sit there floating around in the air for a couple of hours waiting for the airspace to clear out and be safe to land. Real unfortunate for them. Very sad sort of an occurrence. But you know what's even sadder is what happened out in Yaroslavl, folks. Out here in Yaroslavl, the Ukrainians will put that oil wobble on them. I tried to make something rhyme with Yaroslavl. It wasn't really that good. Right down here, though, is one of the largest refineries in terms of refined fuel output in the country. You can tell because it's a pretty big refinery. You can tell that because it's big. But most importantly, we have to point out that the Yaroslavl refinery was hit. Hit quite badly, as a matter of fact. Man, look at that orange glow.
That's so bad. It's such a bad hit right there. Also, by the way, folks, just to let y'all know, I'm currently trying to find more information about the other military aircraft sightings near South Korea right now. I'm beginning to strongly think that there might be an active, pretty large military exercise going on right now. Of course, it's always a remote possibility that maybe there's actually something militarily breaking out between North and South Korea, but I would strongly lean toward the idea that there might be some type of exercise taking place right now. There's just a lot of aircraft in the sky right now that keeps appearing and disappearing off of flight radar.
Well, that is quite interesting. We are, of course, trying to keep as much an eye on that as possible, on the strategic situation near the Republic of Korea, and we'll make sure to update y'all if anything big happens. At the moment, there's just things flying around, but something big might come out of it, and we'll see. But moving on from that, we also were able to see some pictures showing the fires in Yaroslavl at the refinery, and we can clearly see that these are definitely coming from the refinery. As you can actually see, some of the condensing towers and other infrastructure of the refinery, at least in some of the pictures that are actually showing the fires. So, it does appear that that refinery is most likely going to be out of action. Not really a good thing for the Russians to lose such a large and important refinery as this one, that was so fleshed out and highly operational up until this very recent moment where the whole thing got obliterated. Very, very sad for the Russians. Terrible thing. And also, if y'all thought that was crazy, wait until I tell y'all what happened down in the Caspian Sea. You know, folks, this sea right here, this sea actually has a very interesting origin to its name. Matthew, have you ever heard how the Caspian Sea got its name?
I have no idea.
So you see, a Russian man living in Matkachakla on the coastline of the sea. He one day, you know, he swiped right on the tender, and he was going to have a date, and he said, "Oh yay, it's very good." And then he went to date, and the woman did not show up, and he said, "Damn, I got ghosted. Called the shit the Casper like a ghost because I got ghosted like Casper on the sea. We call it the Caspian Sea," and that's how the sea got its name. That's BS, by the way. Don't ever tell that story to your friends. That's not a true story of how the sea got its name. Beyond that, though,
I gotta give that one 2 out of 10 Rotten Tomatoes on that one. That was an interesting one there.
Man, honestly, man, I was trying, man. But beyond that, we did get to see that a oil rig had actually been hit. This here was stated to be the let's see, it was the nitrate plant, or the nitrate plant up in the city of Veliki Novgorod. But from what we know and what we were able to look at here in a little bit, it actually appears to be the oil refinery in the Caspian Sea. We might be mistaken on this, but from what I could tell, most others were saying, and from what I could find, it does appear that it is the case that this is actually footage of the oil refinery, well, the oil rig that got hit out in the Caspian. We did get to see that the largest oil rig in the Caspian Sea was actually obliterated. Look at that thing. And this is the Lukoil super complex. The super complex, I tell you. This thing is practically 3 oil rigs in one. Now that's a big oil rig.
That's a big oil rig right there. Also, by the way, do we know exactly like how bad was the damage? Because of course, with an oil rig, it's very, very flammable. That's the huge deal. Like everybody remembers the disaster down in the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, whatever the hell you want to call it. We remember that whole situation. So do we know if there's like a leak of any sort from this thing, or is there any type of like major like breakage in pipes or something that's leading to oil release?
We don't really know a lot of rather than the attack happened. That's all we know at the moment because there is no video or picture evidence that's come out to let us get a damage assessment of this. And considering that it's in a very remote location of the Caspian Sea, it's probably going to be a couple of days or never for us to actually get enough video footage to analyze the damage and see what's actually been caused to the rig. We do know that it was hit, and apparently, from what we know at a minimum, apparently the flow of 20 wells has been completely stopped as a result. So whatever damage has happened, it has been significant to completely halt extraction for now, but we don't know how long that halt's going to last or if the damage is going to be semi-permanent or permanent to this rig. So unfortunately at the moment there's a lot of mystery surrounding this rather than it was hit, and for now production has been completely stopped at the super rig.
Interesting, interesting. I'll be curious to hear what happens with this because, of course, when you're dealing with oil rigs like that, environmental disaster seems like it could be a pretty big possibility. So I'll be curious to see exactly what was damaged.
Yeah, I would say I'm going to be very interested to see because considering that this thing is literally, once again, folks, 3 oil rigs in one basically, and it pretty much runs the pumps for 20 rigs, I'm quite interested to know what turned out of this thing after it got hit. But moving on from that little bit of news, folks, it is time for us to move on out of the Caspian Sea, where all the Ukrainian hits have successfully landed. Oh, there's one more, by the way. The Ukrainians also did apparently hit a transport aircraft, apparently that of an Antonov 26, within Crimea overnight, and did destroy it. We haven't gotten the video footage yet, but the Russians on multiple military blog channels did confirm that the aircraft had been hit and it had been knocked out. So we haven't gotten the video yet, but considering Russian reports on the ground are confirming the loss of an Antonov 26, we're going to be running with that because why in the world would they lie about losing an aircraft? But anyways, with that, folks, before we move on, we do want to talk about one more thing. Y'all remember the story from a couple of days ago where a British soldier had been announced by the United Kingdom Ministry of Defense of having died in Ukraine in the midst of what appeared to be a training accident. The Russian Federation has actually made a statement on that today, stating that they want to know exactly what that British soldier was doing in Ukraine when he died, and that the British may be conducting terrorist actions or some sort of other acts of terror against the Russian Federation while they're inside the United Kingdom. Also alluding that they may start to conduct strikes specifically against British troops that are inside of Ukraine if they believe that they're conducting any questionable actions, according to the Russian Federation. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this. So Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so that is what Russia is saying right now. They're saying that British troops that are inside of Ukraine are carrying out quote-unquote terror acts on Russia, and they're demanding details on the troops, and they're also going as far as to say that if they catch any NATO troops inside of Ukraine, then they are fair game, and Russia is dedicated to actually go blast them inside of Ukraine. So that was also a wild statement today that came out of Russia, also lending credence to the theory that maybe there might be something more to that idea, that that troop might not have died in maybe a training accident. It could have been something more than that. But once again, I want to make it clear right now what the official statement is: this guy died in a training accident. That's what we're hearing. But what are your thoughts about the whole situation? 58% said Russia is creating a false flag provocation, so that way they can try to aggress against NATO, while 29% said it sounds like the usual yapping, and 7% said Russia is valid in their concern on this one. So I'll admit, the British troops being in Ukraine, that is something that Russia would likely want to respond to if that were to occur. That would naturally cause an escalation. But at the same time, though, it's not being reported that these troops are inside of Ukraine from Britain to fight against Russia. That is not the report. So these troops are apparently military observers, according to what we're hearing. So they're not combatants. They're simply there to observe the Ukrainians in action fighting against the Russians. So they are not fair game, to say the least, as long as they're not fighting and they're active combatants. So the Russians are saying that they're going to hit them intentionally if they find them. So, take that for what you will. Me personally, that's lending credence to the idea to me that there could be more to that story than meets the eye. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd say that the Russians are most likely creating a false flag provocation. I had to be with 57 to 58%. We've known that there has been a multinational coalition of advisors and generally liaisons that have been in Ukraine for years at this point. There even are Americans that are inside of Ukraine by the several hundreds at this point that are representatives of the U.S. Armed Forces, from what we understand, according to prior statements and announcements that were made in the prior administration. So the fact that a British soldier died doesn't really say much of anything, because he could have been anywhere in Ukraine doing anything when he died. And the fact that the British didn't really make that much of a statement on it, it's really hard to say what he was doing. The British will, of course, try and escalate it, though, into some sort of a larger situation. But at the same time, literally every single country in Europe and the United States apparently has our forces in Ukraine to some number, in some degree, that are conducting non-combatant operations in support of the Ukrainian armed forces and their general training, doctrinal abilities, and also possibly technological cooperation, among many other factors that they could be involved in. So I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, because I would have to generally be with the 58%. I think the Russians are just trying to turn this into nothing, considering that this has already been publicly stated to where we would know about it here on the channel about a year and a half ago, as far as the presence of British forces and foreign forces inside of Ukraine. But moving on out of that news and on into some other major news that's been coming out of East Asia today, which I got to tell you, there's some decent developments going on in East Asia today. Before we get on into all of that, though, I do want to make sure that we take a little bit of a breather here for a moment, for a bit of a halftime show, so that way we can answer a couple of questions and then get on with the rest of the news for the night. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so make sure y'all stick around, by the way. That news about Japan and China, that is crazy news right there. It looks like there's some big escalations that could lead to war between those two countries. So very big news coming up here in just a second. But to grab our first 3 Super Chat questions, our first one here is going to go to a channel staple, a longtime channel legend once again. Bobby LC39A puts in another massive $100 support tonight. And a huge shout out to Bobby for being a staple of the Super Chatters. And we do appreciate you. And it's that support that keeps us running. And Bobby said, on with the show.
And thank you so much for the unbelievably massive support, Bobby43. And thank you for helping us to keep going on with the show, thanks to support like yours. I got to thank you impressively for helping this channel to keep running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again, and on with the show indeed. So a huge thanks to you, a massive thanks to you. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the next one, but I always have to give a huge shout out and a big thanks to all of our supporters, especially folks like Bobby43, because their support is absolutely massive and helps us to be able to make this show possible for millions of people, tens of millions of people actually, every single year. They help us to keep our lights on and pay the bills, and nobody has to support the channel, yet folks like him do, and they make the channel possible not just for us, but for everyone else watching right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, since Bobby did not add a question to his super chat, let's do this real quick. Let's make this a quick little side note real quick, because I see a ton of people still asking for updates about it. If you go to Flight Radar 24 and you look at the call sign MUAV0011, there's currently a South Korean military aircraft, which appears to be in a search pattern off the coast of South Korea. And this is also happening at the exact same time we're seeing a bunch of Apaches and also other aircraft circling around different areas of South Korea at random, it seems. Take a look at that real quick, because it looks like there's something going on out there right off the coast. Not sure what it would be. Maybe a foreign vessel has shown up off the coast or something. Not really sure, but that aircraft is honing in on something right off the coast. So if you have Flight Radar 24 up, we can take a look.
Here's the aircraft right here, folks. It is a South Korean patrol aircraft. We do not. It's apparently called a tactical hex. I don't know if that's some wizard stuff right there. But it's currently at an altitude of about 5,000 feet, which would suggest that it's in some sort of a surge pattern due to its lower altitude. Although we do not see it conducting a pattern at this moment. It took off from Busan and it's flown north along the South Korean border up into this area. I would actually say.
That's a different one, actually. That's actually one I did not see previously. So that one's on the eastern side of South Korea. There's another one that's circling around that one right there that you just clicked on that's doing a search pattern.
Interesting. And I actually didn't know what coast you were talking about because South Korea is surrounded by coasts. I was like, I don't know. I was trying to frantically find this thing. But beyond that, it does appear that this one is conducting some form. Actually, it doesn't really appear to be a search pattern. It's more so a racetrack at the moment. So we actually don't know what that one's doing, but it doesn't really appear to be searching for anything. And it's also at 25,000 feet. And it's also at a wildly slow speed of about 100 miles an hour. So basically stall speed nearly, for I would assume, for this aircraft. But a search pattern is fairly distinct. It usually is something along the lines of a cube-shaped sort of a pattern where they zigzag through an area and start to conduct a search. This actually appears to be more so in orbit at the moment, which gives us an idea that it might be waiting for some additional orders, and also appears that a large part of the flight path here may have been guesstimated, because an aircraft could never do near 170 like that on the spot. So I'm guessing that's just
Could it be a P-8 Poseidon, perhaps? Because the altitude, the maximum altitude for a P-8 Poseidon, I believe, is 41,000 feet. It doesn't say what the aircraft is here. It doesn't show us that at all. It just says tactical hex, which I'm not even sure what that means. I'd have to do some research. But we're not told the aircraft. So what do you think this is, a P-8 Poseidon, or what do you think it could be?
1 second. Let me go pull up the available aircraft that South Korea has, because maybe we can start finding some answers here to this. The Republic of Korea Navy. Let's go look at their equipment. Guess maybe they have some aircraft under their command, and we would like to make sure that we are talking about this properly and we know the equipment that they have at their disposal. So they have some P3 Orions, some Caravans, and they do have some P8 Poseidons. So there is a possibility that it could be any one of these three. It could either be a P8 Poseidon, or it could be a P3 Orion, which is basically the Poseidon before the Poseidon. This is the older variant that does the same job. And then there's also the Cessna Caravan 2s that they also have as well. So the highly likely chance is that if it's any one of these, it's most likely a P3 Orion, because they actually have roughly about 15 of those. They only have 6 P8 Poseidons and 5 Caravan 2s. And considering that the Caravan 2s are target tugs, they're obviously not being used for any maritime patrol. So it's most likely a P3 Orion, which would make a little bit of sense. Also, it appears to have sped up a good bit now. It's now going at 300 miles an hour. And let's take a look at the other one that's now covering a great deal of ground at about 256 knots, and is still making its way towards to the Korean DMZ at the moment. I ought to be honest with y'all folks, I'm not really one to take a lot of guesses at stuff. Military activity around the Koreas is somewhat common generally, so I'm not really one to say that, you know, like a war is happening or even a major exercise. This could be some sort of a hunt for a vessel that may have gone missing, or it may be the fact that there is some sort of another incident happening like yesterday where Chinese and Russian aircraft are getting close to the waters of South Korea, or there may be vessels getting close to the waters of South Korea, and for that reason these aircraft are now up in the sky. So it's probably not anything incredibly big at all, really. It's just more so air activity that's at a more heightened level than normal for the country, but nothing extremely out of the ordinary.
I'm leaning towards the idea of still a military exercise, because why would so many, there's like, I've seen like 4 or 5 Apaches across South Korea so far that's popping up on flight radar. They're not there now. They keep turning their transponders on and off apparently. So I'm guessing it's some type of exercise. Also, by the way, we did get some word in the prior days that there were some certain U.S. officials calling for more increased military exercises in South Korea to prepare for escalation in the region. So I don't think they've announced a scheduled military exercise. That's the part that sort of got me a little bit questionable here. But I would tend to think it likely is an exercise, because it doesn't appear that these aircraft are converging on one location. They appear to be all in many different areas around the entire country. And also the helicopters, they're all over the place. There's some in the southern part, there was some in the north. There was one that looked like it was heading into North Korea. So I really wish I had screenshot that, by the way, because I know some people are going to say, well, I didn't see that. It disappeared. Sadly, I couldn't screenshot it in time. It literally disappeared 5 seconds after I looked at it. So sadly, I don't have it. Maybe someone else got it and was able to screenshot it, but that was an interesting thing.
I would have to say that I'm not really sure if it would be a military exercise because can you give off the geographical areas where these Apaches were showing up beyond the one that looked like it was crossing the border?
So one looked like it was northeast of Seoul. That was one of them. Then there was the one that looked like it was heading toward Pyongyang about 1 or 2 miles or maybe a little bit over the North Korean border that disappeared. And then there was another one to the south of Seoul, down toward the area where you see that aircraft circling right off the coast. And then there was one more. I can't remember the location of the other one that I was referring to, but there was one more somewhere else. I just can't remember where it was. And then obviously you have that patrol aircraft on the eastern coast, and you have the one on the western coast as well.
I would say that it's probably not a military exercise because military exercises are usually announced well in advance, especially in Korea, due to the possibility of unwarranted escalation with North Korea, especially with that much activity near to the DMZ. So it would probably be unlikely that it is a military exercise. It probably is something else. Do we know
Wait,
what nationality the Apaches were from?
really quickly before they disappear again, they turn on the transponders. Punch in card 20, the call sign. There they are. There's two of them right there.
Let's see. This is a AH-64E of the United States Army, and this is also a UH-60 Blackhawk of the U.S. Army as well. These are down near Pyeongtaek right now. I believe this is actually near to an Army aviation facility. So let me try and see here what we've got. Yeah, here's the Army aviation facility right here. So they're actually conducting an orbit at the moment because their flight path actually shows they're conducting orbits over the field. This could be some form of training. It is daylight hours in Korea right now, so this could be some sort of training or regular routine flights or exercises that are being conducted near to the Pyeongtaek Army Aviation Field.
Yeah, and also notice the unnamed aircraft that's off the western coast of South Korea, the one we looked at doing the surge pattern or the circular pattern. That one there appears to be generally in the same area. It's obviously not next to the helicopters, but it's generally along the same area of South Korea, not too far away from the helicopters, but it's still a decent ways away. But it seems to be generally in the same spot.
Yeah, it does appear to generally be somewhat in a similar geographical location, but I would say that it's probably not that big of a thing. There's another Black Hawk here, and we actually have a national police helicopter in Seoul. That police helicopters in cities are nothing crazy. And then we also have a Forced Aviation Service helicopter that's apparently either landing or taking off at the Gimpo International Airport in Seoul currently. So I would say it's probably nothing too severe, because especially since from what we're seeing right now in transponder, it appears to mostly be some form of Black Hawk flights. This may just be some sort of a movement or rotation of a Army Aviation Regiment or brigade inside of South Korea, or some form of a training or flight hours day for people to just make sure that they're not getting rusty on being helicopter pilots, so that way they can get in their hours while they're in Korea.
Yeah, it could be. Also, by the way, another Black Hawk just showed up over, let's see here, over a different city. It looks like it's over Seongnam. It's card 39. So that's another city that another appears to be a Black Hawk this time has showed up over.
Oh yeah, we actually brought that one up a couple of minutes ago, up in
Okay.
Seongnam. So right now we know of a National Police helicopter, two Blackhawks, and an AH-64E that are up in the air right now. Most of them just south of Seoul. And then we also know of two Korean Air Force patrol aircraft. Apparently, these are not of the South Korean Navy. These are actually designated as the South Korean Air Force. So if we were to take that into instance, and considering that apparently these aircraft are not of a fighter variety, they appear to be a larger aircraft, at least according to what flight radar is stating. They could be Hawker 800s, which are private jets basically that they use for reconnaissance. They could be E-7 Wedgetails, or they could be anything else like the A330 Voyager tankers that they have, or any variety of transports, although it would be highly unlikely that they send a transport out into these areas. And also considering that this aircraft now appears to be conducting an actual search pattern at the moment, considering that it's now conducting what appears to be that general, almost cube-like shaped pattern that is covering a wider area. And it is quite close to the DMZ, only a couple of miles south of the well, a couple of dozen miles south of the DMZ at the moment. So, a little bit interesting, but I'll say, folks, until we get any further official statements or video or picture evidence out of this just appears to be some, maybe slightly abnormal activities within the area, but aviation, especially maritime patrols like these, are nothing too unheard of. The United States conducts so many of these every day, we just never even cover any of them. And on top of that, there is a lot of Army aviation present in South Korea all the time, and considering that's daylight over there, not nighttime, any operations that would be covert would not be conducted in daylight hours. They would be conducted at night to try and get the drop on these North Koreans. So I would generally say this probably isn't an exercise. This is just normal Army aviation activity in the area, just a little bit larger amount on transponder.
Another one just appeared right now. This one appears to be toward the southern coast that Rob Marston pointed out. He said, look at call sign SH803. It appears to be doing search patterns in the south part of the country.
SH803, and do we have like a geographical area for that, or is it just in
well,
the
punch
south?
it in, it'll show you.
Let's see. And what's the call sign again?
SH803.
SH803. This one?
No, that does not appear to be it. It looks like it's disappeared from ADSB. It was there though. I just checked it and I just saw it. It was in the southern part of the country, down near, I think it was near Busan.
Interesting. We'll try and keep an eye on that, folks. But for now, we're going to make sure to keep moving on with the news because we've still got a lot to cover and we're running out of time. So with that, we are on to the second question of the segment.
And this one goes to Mark Ead. And thank you very much, Mark, for that $50 support right there. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And it's that support that keeps the channel running. And Mark said Thirsty Thursdays, LOC, and NZ for New Zealand.
Hey, and a massive thanks to you for the support, Marky. And of course, it's a Thirsty Thursday. And honestly, folks, I'm actually kind of parched. I could go for some water right now. But I do thank you massively for the support, Marky. And of course, being one of our viewers from New Zealand, because you are a part of the Lee Spring Army all the way out there in New Zealand. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. And we wouldn't be able to keep making it a reality all the way up until this day. And so, of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army will never die. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're moving on into the rest of the news.
All right, so our last one's going to go to Renegade Preppers UK, who puts in a generous $20 support. And thank you very much, good sir, as well, all the way from the UK. He said, good evening, Enforcer Matt, and the LOC as well. And he hopes everyone is well. And he thought he would share that he found out that we are expecting our new bundle of a new member of the LOC in April, an LLT, LOC.
Oh,
and also,
nice.
congratulations, by the way. I'm glad to hear it.
And really cool to hear, Renegade Preppers. I got to thank you so much for the massive amounts of support that you've been throwing in tonight. You've actually thrown in 3 20-pound super chats each. This is the first one. And I got to thank you incredibly for the support. And I hope that everyone is well tonight. I hope y'all are all doing well out there in the live chat. And I also got to say, a big congrats. It's very good to hear that you're going to be having a newborn here very soon, in just a couple of months. I gotta say that that's an incredibly great thing to hear, and it's wonderful to know that we're getting a new member of the Lee Spring Army. So humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the rest of the news that we have for the night. Sadly, folks, unless there's anything major going on, like someone getting killed or shot, we're probably not going to be able to cover the Korean situation because we've got a lot to go and not a lot of time to do it. So moving on from that and on into Thailand and Cambodia, we have been able to hear that according to the Thai government today, in a bit of a shocking announcement, the Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul, who just stated that they're going to war with Cambodia and has started what we consider, at least according to the Thai position, to be a defensive war, he has announced today that he's going to be returning power to the people as he submits to a royal decree to King Vajiralongkorn, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I know I'm mispronouncing that, who requested permission to dissolve the parliament following a disagreement with the country's largest political party, the People's Party. If his effort to dissolve parliament is successful, Charnvirakul will have 60 days to call elections according to the Thai constitution, with him stating that the action will not impact the ongoing conflict with Cambodia. So at the moment, government. Currently, the Thai government will be dissolving. To explain how that works, the Thai government is the Kingdom of Thailand is not descending into a state of anarchy. A dissolving of a government, especially when we're talking about a parliament, means that they are going to technically dissolve the current parliament and reform it. A lot of the current members will still be around in the new parliament. Practically all of them will be, but they will be getting a new prime minister, technically reforming the government by creating new coalitions. Currently inside of Thailand, and actually in a lot of countries right now, there isn't a large majority for a singular party within their government. So what they have to do to be able to have the majority to technically rule as a party is that they have to do something called creating a coalition. In the UK, this is an incredibly common sort of an occurrence, as usually the Labour Party or the Conservative Party, which are the two ruling parties in the United Kingdom, are the ones who generally vie for the majority. They usually have to create a coalition with the smaller parties, like, for example, the Green Party, the SNP Party, or any other of the nationalist Welsh or Irish parties, to be able to try and create a government that technically has the majority to be able to be the government. Considering that right now Thailand's having some issues with that and they haven't really been able to form a proper majority government through a coalition, they're now going to be dissolving the government and reforming it. That most likely means that Anutin Charnavakul is probably not going to be the prime minister here incredibly soon, and that will be generally the case of things that are going to be happening in Thailand. The government will still continue to operate and the army will still continue to fight the Cambodians, but at the moment they're going through their general ebbs and flows of having to figure out what in the hell they're doing. So moving on from that, we are going to be moving into the front lines, which are a little bit less active today, at least in the footage that I could find, but it is still a raging war at the moment. We did get footage once again from the area of Krongpoi Pet showing Thai forces holding their positions. We were able to see that in this clip right here. We hear significant firefights as the soldier uses his M16, it appears, to lay down fire in the distance. We can also hear heavy machine gun and rifle fire coming from both directions. You see him laying down more fire as he ducks down the trench and then pops back up to fire off a couple of more shots. He's now moving down the trench at a pretty high rate of speed, at least for a couple of feet, until he makes it to some sort of a dugout. He's now reloading his magazine and apparently yelling out information to his squad members. We now see him pushing full release and now laying down automatic fire. Rounds are whizzing overhead. You see, apparently he's having to fix a jam in the midst of the firefight. Not really a great thing. And we now see him laying down more fire.
Damn. Those mags don't last even a second.
Yeah, honestly, man, this jammed like twice now. They need to get new mags. We now see him continue to pop over the trench sporadically, laying down automatic fire. And then ducking back down here for a moment as we continue to hear the major fighting raging over the trench line. We hear him talking to a squad member here that's out of frame. And that's the end of that clip generally. We also saw on the other side of the border that Thai airstrikes were actually able to manage to knock out 4 T-55s and a BM-21 Grad. This footage here is actually taken from what we believe to be a Thai Air Force F-16's targeting pod, actually showing us a very bad quality view of their airstrike on the armored column. These are generally the best armor that Cambodia actually has to put up on the front, which are T-55s and a very limited number of T-62s and some Chinese variants of those forms of tanks. But they're not incredibly well off in terms of armor, and we can see that the Thai Air Force is already picking off these tanks before they can even make it to the front to fire at the Thai forces. This is actually confirming for the first time ever, by the way, folks, during the 7-Eleven War and the Casino War, the first time that the Thai have ever disabled and destroyed a Cambodian main battle tank from what we could see at any point in either conflict. This is also showing significant escalation considering that these actions are being made. And obviously this is killing a great deal of Cambodian soldiers and also destroying a significant amount of their armored forces in a single airstrike.
You got to feel for those Cambodians. They're in foul shape at this point. Really, honestly, they're in very foul shape because the only thing they have up their sleeve at this point is they do have long-range missile launchers in pretty decent numbers, actually. And we had heard the rumors yesterday that Cambodia was going to whip those out and start firing really deep into Thailand and striking probably civilian areas. So far, we haven't seen that in mass yet, but it's still on the horizon. But you are seeing there that the Air Force that Thailand has, which Cambodia lacks, is doing a number on all their equipment.
And they really are at this moment. The Thai are once again in complete control of the situation on the battlefield, and it appears that they're hitting and destroying Cambodian forces at will. They also hit an oil depot. We didn't get an exact geographical location, and unfortunately I couldn't geolocate this, but the Thai Air Force did hit an oil depot last night that was claimed to be launching kamikaze drones, and Grad launchers apparently were also based out of this oil depot as well. The Thai have hit it, and you can see from the mushroom cloud that a first detonation or explosion had happened only moments before this picture was taken. It's showing that the Thai Air Force is really owning the skies at this point and really striking whatever they want within the northern part of Cambodia. Additionally, we also saw an MLRS battery of the Cambodian army firing on the Thai, and actually, funnily enough, folks, I was able to get an exact geolocation for this one. So if we come down here to this area, right near to this temple, the Praset Ta Muan Tom Temple, right down here on this road, somewhere around here, near this tree, that is actually about the rough location where this launch was conducted. It was somewhere around this road right here. You can actually see some of the similar geographical landmarks, like this tree and then the groves off in the distance, that give us an idea that it was within this general area. Doing specific geolocation in open fields and forested areas is a little bit more difficult, but this is about the closest I could get it down to being about exact. Also, I don't know what that is. Apparently that's a restricted area or something on the map. But anyways, here's the clip. Make it stop!
Jeez, that guy. Wow, that guy right there must be rattling his brain.
And he's like, is it over?
Honestly, though, I can imagine that probably wrecks your eardrums, probably bleeding by the time that's over.
And it's probably like extremely loud, honestly. But this guy, he's not wasting any time. He's gone.
Hey, you said this is the Cambodians doing this, by the way?
Yeah, this was the Cambodian army.
Yeah, that's really the Cambodians. Like when it comes to like fighting ability and strategy, it's really reckless because not only does Cambodia launch the stuff literally right next to a civilian highway like this, which is reckless, they also fire intentionally sometimes and also indiscriminately right into civilian areas inside of Thailand. So when it comes to having like rules they follow, it's not really the big thing on that.
Yeah, they're not really that good at that at all. Additionally, we also saw further down the line some Cambodian forces holding their positions. This is actually the first infantry footage that we've gotten out of the Casino War of the Cambodians on their side. So here's the clip. Oh, I'm sorry. They actually have those trapped Cambodian beats. Call them Bowden because they're camming that Bodian. But anyways, man, look at that. No, you know.
Shouldering.
no proper. No proper ability. Dude, I'm turning into bi. Oh look, Jack, you gotta
I thought you were
hold
doing
that
a skit.
rifle, man. Like,
I thought you were doing a skit for a minute. I was like, what in the world? I was like, I didn't know you were actually stuttering.
Manual of arms is what I'm trying to
Yeah, there
say.
you go.
There is no proper manual of arms here at all, folks. None at all. I was trying to think, folks, about what I was going to be saying here in a second about the whole war, and I got distracted. So then I sat there and literally whipped out a full Biden on y'all, unironically. I just went, "Oh look, he's holding 2 shotgun blasts into the air. You gotta ask if a man is on the moon." but anyways, no shouldering at all of the rifle, and they're kind of bouncing and hopping around.
They call that the Spider-Man right there. He go back and show that again. That guy's got some flexibility right there. Look at him go.
Wait, hold on,
He's
man.
got his Pilates in for the week.
Let me do it right.
Bum, bum, bum. Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Look at him. He does what a spider can. Jumps through the opening, goes to runs through, shoots the gun. Look out.
Oh man,
Here comes the Spider-Man.
that's a real quick way to get a. That's a real quick way to get an injury right there. Jumping around like that, he's going to sprain an ankle or something pretty quick.
Dude, now they're doing the Russian squat dance. You know the one I'm talking about, man? They're like, hey, dude. Oh my god. Bro, I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't think they get proper rifle training in the Cambodian army.
I doubt it. The Cambodians are not confident spot. This guy's jumping around like a rabbit. I mean, look at this guy. He's dragging his pack out with him.
Man, he's just firing a little blindly, you know, like they do. Man, Cambodia, I think, is cooked, honestly, folks. I just don't think they have it in them. Because, you know, when the Ukrainians first started defending their land, they had it down. You know, they were well trained. They weren't the best equipped as they were in, like, say, 2023 and early 2024, but they certainly were doing quite a good job as far as tactics on the field. But the Cambodians don't really seem to have that, though. On the other side of the border, we also got to see the Thai moving a little quickly with their APCs. These are M113s, by the way.
Man, you know what happens with the Thai? They go to war like this. They get out here in the battlefield and they can't go home. You know what they call home and tell their relatives?
What?
They say, "I'm tied up right now. I'll have to get with you later."
Oh!
Oh! And then the Cambodians actually got tied up. Oh, and that went bad.
Man. Hey, yo.
Now I don't know what you're thinking about that. I don't even know what in the
Man,
world's going through your head.
I just randomly inserted that to see what your response would be. No joke, man. I was like, I wonder what he would say if I said "Ayo" in the middle of this. Like, there's nothing to say that over. I'll just say it, though, and see what happens. You're like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? I was like, dang, okay. But beyond that, the war is still ongoing. It's a heavy fight at the moment along the border, and it does appear that the Thai are generally the ones curb stomping the Cambodians. Who would have ever guessed that was coming around the corner? The Thai, which are a fairly wealthy country with a GDP of about, 550 billion, are beating the ass out of a country with a $40 billion GDP. Who would have ever seen that one coming, folks? Not me. But moving on out of there, we did get to see that Japan just an hour ago was actually hit with a 6.5 magnitude earthquake in the same area as the 7.1 that hit just a few days ago. The Japanese self-defense forces are already within this area, so search, rescue, and recovery efforts are going to be pretty quick. We also saw that the United States of America and the state of Japan have conducted a small show of force today, with a B-52H bomber being accompanied by Japanese F-16s in the East China Sea for a show of force. While the United States government is not really making a lot of statements in support of Japan, this one flight is kind of like a halfway house bit, a little bit of like a form of support, at least in the verbal sense or the symbolic sense, to the Japanese.
That's a pretty big deal, though. I mean, to do this is in direct response to what China just did with the joint Russian exercises. So, I mean, that's a pretty big one.
Man, who in the world got Epstein up in here, man? Oh, hello. Like, man, who in the world got his private jet up in this thing?
I don't even know.
Man, I tell you, man, that's crazy right there. And where are they going? I don't know. There's a lot of islands out here, though, so you better keep an eye out where that thing goes. By the way, I'm just kidding. That's actually a Japanese recon jet, by the way. But we can see here. Oh, look at those Japanese F-15Js. Goodness gracious. What a beautiful F-15.
They really do have a way with the airframe.
Man, I tell you.
They are mission specific. They are on task and ready to do the mission.
Man, I also got to say this, man. I absolutely cannot stand anymore, man. You know, at the beginning of the war, false flag was like the buzzword. Nowadays, the buzzword is AI. Like everything is AI made. This is not AI made,
AI?
folks. This actually happened.
Do you use AI? ChatGPT? Do you use
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT? AI?
This actually happened today, folks. The Japanese Self-Defense Forces put out a statement on it and said that a flight was conducted with the B-52 through the East China Sea. So this happened. Like, this isn't just made up. But anyways, with that, we also were able to see further on down that the Japanese are building a little defense network, apparently around the Ryukyu Islands, near to Taiwan. Now, the Ryukyu Islands are these islands down here. You thought. I'm just kidding. The Ryukyu Islands are actually all the way down here. These are quite actually, Yonaguni is the furthest one west. These are actually about 70 miles off the coast of Taiwan. They are sovereign Japanese territory. It's undisputed territory within this area. The Chinese do dispute the control over the Senkaku Islands, which are right here, these little tiny islands right here that are unoccupied. But the ones that are occupied further south, like Yonaguni and the other larger islands around the area, like Iromotejima and also Ishikagi, these are actually occupied, and nobody questions that these are Japan. So, with that in mind, a lot of people are saying that the Japanese apparently are building missile archipelagos on these islands. Now, that's interesting. I also got to say that I do like the Type 89 Japanese service rifle. It does actually look pretty cool. But that's a whole side note for another time, folks. Another time in another place. Still, it does appear that Japan is preparing to defend itself, hook, line, and sinker, tooth and nail if they have to, and it seems as though they are not going to back down to the Chinese whatsoever. And I gotta say, folks, I think that the Japanese are entirely justified in their self-defense, considering that the Chinese are being overtly aggressive towards the Japanese, because they made a statement that they would have to defend their sovereignty and national defense if the Chinese took an action to invade Taiwan, which it's absolutely insane that that would create a response from the Chinese. So I would say the Japanese are 100% justified in conducting these actions of self-defense. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so this whole thing popped off because Japan put missiles on an island, I believe it's Yonaguni Island, right off the coast of Taiwan. And that's what kicked this whole thing off, and China went berserk over that. And now Japan's building a new missile site near Taiwan in a further escalation with China. And some people are speculating that Japan is trying to audition to be the next filming site for of Pooh, Blood, and Honey, apparently. They want to have the new Winnie the Pooh horror film filmed close by their shores, apparently. So what are y'all thinking about that right now? Let's see what y'all think. 88% said Japan is justified and right by doing this, while 4% said Japan could have waited a bit since the escalations are out of control, and 5% said that's very unwise at this time. So I would say, I believe that Japan is justified in doing this. I would say that even though Japan technically provoked China, now they provoked them for the right reasons, but they technically provoked China when they put those missiles on Yonaguni Island, I would say Japan is justified. But at the same time, though, we have to remember that Japan may or may not have U.S. support if they get attacked by China. I'm not really sure if the U.S. is going to come to their aid very quickly. We should, and I think we're obligated to, but I'm not sure if we will. So Japan's taking a risk here, unless they have some secret agreement with the U.S. behind the scenes that we don't know about, then they're taking a pretty big risk. But I would be with the 88%. I think they are right by doing this, but it could lead to a war, actually, because this is a pretty big second escalation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would actually have to say that I would disagree with Enforcer Matt, because if I remember the sequence of events properly, the Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi made the statement that if China invades Taiwan, Japan would most likely have to get involved because it would become a self-defense prerogative, considering that the war would most likely encompass Japanese territorial waters around the Karaku or island chain in this area. And so for that reason, the Chinese then made threatening statements threatening to kill the Prime Minister of Japan, and then the Chinese Coast Guard and Navy then violated the waters of the islands of the Senkaku island chain, which are a part of the sovereign territory of Japan. Then that's what led to the Japanese ground self-defense forces to set up the air defense missile systems inside of Yonaguni. So I wouldn't really say that the Japanese were the ones to provoke the Chinese, at least in that scenario, because the deployment of missiles to Yonaguni only happened after the Chinese violated the waters of the Senkaku Islands, which are Japanese territorial waters, and the United Nations does declare that the Senkaku Islands, while contested, are clearly Japanese sovereign territory, meaning that Chinese vessels violated Japanese waters and posed a significant national security risk to their control of the sovereign islands of the Senkaku, which are controlled by the state of Japan. So for that reason, I would say that the Japanese are well within the right of self-defense, and if the United States didn't back them, that would be absolutely disappointing, considering that the Chinese were the first to take a provocative action, and the Japanese are simply attempting to respond for their own self-defense. That would be generally my statement. I would have to be with the 87%. The Japanese certainly do have a right to defend themselves against the People's Republic of China, especially considering the open and unwarranted aggression that the Chinese have been conducting over a simple statement, over a hypothetical scenario that has not happened yet and most likely will not happen for the next 2 years. And the Chinese have gone and taken that statement on a hypothetical scenario and have threatened death to the leader of the state of Japan, and not only that, have conducted actual violations of Japan's sovereignty in the Senkaku Islands. So with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion, because I think the Japanese are well within their right to conduct every action that they have been so far, and if anything, they're still quite reserved at that. But moving on from that, we are going to be passing through the Middle East really quickly on our way to the hunt for Captain Crack Sparrow, as we did hear that apparently the Israelis, at least according to Israeli broadcasting authorities, have stated that the Israeli army has been preparing for broad offensive plans targeting Hezbollah positions in Lebanon, basically meaning another wave of airstrikes will be going through southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River. We'll wait and see for when that happens. It's pretty much a run-of-the-mill sort of an occurrence these days for the Israelis to bomb southern Lebanon. There's basically a time, there's never really been a time in the past 2 years that hasn't been happening normally. But when it happens, we'll be making sure to cover the developments and updates on what exactly was hit and what sort of officials or officers of Hezbollah have been killed, and also what kind of equipment may have been destroyed in the process. Moving on out of the Middle East, it's now time for us, folks, to move on into the Americas, and specifically the hunt for Captain Crack Sparrow. It's time for us to get on into all this, folks, because it is one hell of a story and one hell of an adventure. First off, we were able to hear that down near the coastline, the U.S. Is announcing that they are going to be seizing more tankers. This footage is from the yesterday's seizure of the Iranian tanker that was seized by the United States by a court order that was issued from a federal court giving authorization to the U.S. Armed Forces to conduct the seizure of a vessel that was on a sanctions list here in the United States of America. And we do understand that according to U.S. officials that have spoken to Reuters, they are now planning on conducting these actions regularly on the seizures of oil vessels. This now means that this was the beginning of yesterday, a blockade against the state of Venezuela. The Venezuelan government also confirmed that the vessel that was seized was apparently carrying 2 million, not billion, they actually said billion in the headliner, but it was carrying around 1.9 million barrels of crude, which is quite a significant amount. And to quickly give you all an idea of how much crude this was, let me type in Venezuela oil consumption daily, and let me see if I can get y'all here. So Venezuela's oil consumption daily is about 325,000 barrels a day. So this was actually quite a significant amount of oil for the Republic of Venezuela. And unfortunately, folks, I wouldn't really be able to know the number too well of how many days of oil this would be, but it still was a significant amount of oil that was lost that the United States has now seized. The United States
also look at the irony of it, by the way, because they're alleging, and according to the United States government, this vessel right here had links to Iran in some way or another, like to the IRGC or something like that. I can't remember the exact details, but it had links to Iran allegedly. The Iranians have been funding the Yemeni Houthi rebels down in Yemen to hijack vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. They've been doing that for a very long time, and in fact, the U.S. has even bombed Yemen to try to deal with the Houthis over hijacking these ships and basically performing piracy. So after Iran did all that, now Iran is getting a taste of their own medicine when the U.S. went down here and just boarded this thing. The crew didn't put up a fight at all. The U.S. just took it, a very textbook operation, very skillfully done. We took the whole thing, and we also said, also, by the way, for the trouble, we're keeping the oil and the ship. So it's like, I think we've paid Iran back for all the Houthi madness at this point, and it sounds like they're going to keep doing it. So we're about to top the Houthis by a long shot.
Yeah, I would have to say we are definitely topping the Houthis. Man, the Houthis have been conducting amateur operations compared to what the Coast Guard's doing. The Coast Guard runs a professional operation. The Houthis are small timers. We work in the big
Man.
business.
They said, how much do you want, Coast Guard? And the Coast Guard said, we'll take the whole damn thing, the whole damn thing. I mean, the ship, the oil, we'll take the whole thing. We'll just have it. Like, who cares about divvying up the ship or stuff like that? We'll just take the whole thing. They're currently selling it north. I'm not sure where they're going to dock the ship at, but it's sailing north, back up toward what's north of this, by the way? What do we have? Like Grenada or something?
Oh man, we got everything. We got Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadalupe, Montserrat, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, and Anguilla before they even make it towards the Bermuda Triangle, heading towards the Atlantic coast on the southeast.
Yeah, honestly. Also, by the way, this appears to actually be controversial. I didn't know this was going to be controversial, but it looks like there's people in the chat that are very, very angry about the U.S. seizing these vessels. Me personally, I'll say this: while some people may have objections to it, I will admit this is kind of a first for the United States in modern history to start seizing tankers like this, especially in this context. It's kind of like a bit of a first. I will say it is good payback. If it is truly Iranian linked, which it appears it is, based on what we're hearing from the United States, then we're basically paying back Iran for all their stuff they've been doing in the Strait. So I don't have any problem with it personally.
I would have to also say, folks, I just got to kind of call hypocrisy here when I see it. Some people are saying, I guess the U.S. is doing piracy now. Aren't y'all the same group of people who are saying that the United States ought to seize and stop Russian shadow tankers, every single one of them around the world? Aren't y'all the same group saying that? Like, for these few people who are saying that? Like, that doesn't, like, how in the world, so it's not piracy when we do it against the Russians, but when we do it against an Iranian tanker, oh, God forbid, we stop an Iranian tanker. But we can stop the Russian ones all day. But the Iranian ones are a different story, although they're also on a sanctions list as well. So I don't really understand the logic behind that one. And also, on top of that, folks, we're not going around obliterating these oil tankers like we are the little fisherman boats. The fisherman boats are a different story, and that's quite dubious and questionable. But on the other level, if we have a ship on a sanctions list here in the United States where we go, we don't like that country, like Iran or Russia, and we put all of their tankers on a sanctions list for any company or any vessel of Iran that is operating out of Iran or Russia and is helping them to make money, and we have them on a sanctions list, as long as we go through the proper process legally here in the United States of seizing the vessel and apprehending the crew and then deporting them back to their home countries, we are conducting a completely legal process. If they have a problem with that, they can come and go to war with us over it, but they're not. They're going to sit back and let it happen. So unless if they want to go to war with us, we can do whatever we want out there. And I gotta say, folks, I just don't really, like, I call out hypocrisy when I see it. That's why I'm not a political person, because I see hypocrisy in both political aisles, and I also don't like the hypocrisy of everyone demanding that the United States goes and seizes the Russian oil tankers, but then when the Iranians come around to having theirs, then, oh, God forbid, now we're pirates for taking an Iranian oil tanker.
The reason we're doing it to Iran is because Iran really can't do anything in response. The U.S. Well, I say that. I was about to say that, but I was about to have to eat my foot on that one. I was about to say if the U.S. wasn't scared of Russia's nukes, then maybe we would seize the Russian shadow fleet. But I'm not really sure if we would, even if they didn't have nukes. To be perfectly honest, but we don't do it to Russia because of the nukes. Like, we don't want to get into a nuclear war, and the United States is probably scared that maybe if we start seizing these Russian shadow fleet vessels, then maybe that'll start some type of nuclear exchange. I think that's their maybe the reasoning. I'm not really sure at this point. It's kind of hard to keep up with it. But we're not worried about Iran, though. Iran doesn't have nukes. They really can't do anything to us. And if Iran causes trouble, we'll simply send the B-2s back, and that'll shut them up for a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like that definitely will. But this is not piracy, folks. Like I gotta say, folks, it really. Like, when I see people do that, I just, like, it really does irk me a lot. And it doesn't really matter if I say this, but I got to get this off my chest. How people could be so hypocritical about stuff. And that's what we have as a huge critique. And people never realize this because only one party's in charge at a time in America. And then we, criticize stuff they do in foreign policy and everything whenever either one's in charge. But you can't be a hypocrite with a straight face, especially when you're talking in the live chat, because I see it. And I've seen, like, a lot of the people I'm seeing right now that are saying the United States is conducting acts of piracy. Whenever the topic of Russian shadow tanker comes up, everyone talks about we should be seizing all of them. Well, isn't that an act of piracy, even if we have a court order? I mean, it is, by going off of that definition. So either they're all acts of piracy or they're not. And my answer is that none of them are acts of piracy. These are enemy states, and these vessels are operating in conjunction in support of these enemy states. And for that reason, we are conducting actions in national security interests and also in the best interests of our sphere of influence, and continuing to interdict actions that support our enemies and rivals. So for that matter, it's not an act of piracy. And if the Iranians want to call it that, well, they can try and come over here and get the ship back. They're probably all going to end up going to the grave in the process, but they can still try. But moving on from that, we did get to hear that the ship is traveling north along the Eastern Caribbean island chain. It's currently around St. Lucia at the moment, and we understand that it's eventually going to be heading to the United States. We just don't know where at the moment. So it could end up really anywhere along the southeastern coast, or really anywhere, honestly. I mean, the sky's the limit. It could go anywhere on the U.S. East Coast. It could go into the Gulf. We really don't know where it's heading. We do know, though, that if it's going to unload the oil, it probably will actually have to head into the Gulf, because a lot of the oil unloading areas in that region are in the Gulf. There are some on the East Coast, obviously, but there's a large bulk of them around this area, and it's also directly along the refineries. So that's probably where they'll be taking it eventually. So I would assume, folks, they're going to skirt around all the islands, go through the Bahamas, and then skirt through into the Gulf and probably head towards a place like Galveston or Beaumont or Port Arthur or somewhere around there. But anyways, with that, a lot of people have been talking about these actions that were taken by the seizure of the vessel and the statements that the United States are actually going to be seizing more of these vessels. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So if you really think about it, the U.S. is really doing Venezuela a favor because there's about to be a change of management in Venezuela. And when management changes to a new manager, things typically get a little bit sketchy. It gets chaotic and stuff like that. So what better way to help the Venezuelans with their transition than to take this oil off their hands and simply take that for our and simply borrow that? Because, of course, we need that oil. Even though the U.S. is probably energy independent, we need some extra oil. Who doesn't want some extra oil? It's good cash, right? It's good cash. But right now, what are your thoughts about the situation? So 61% said it, this situation is totally justified and the U.S. should continue, while 19% said it's unjustified and the USA should stop this immediately, and 12% said I'm 50-50 on this one. So believe it or not, about 40% of the audience is not really sure about this, which is kind of surprising to me. Me personally, I actually support this. I know some people are going to argue it as piracy. Honestly, what is the definition of piracy, by the way? Let's pull that up real quick. Piracy.
Isn't that when you burn a movie onto like a blank DVD and then you go sell it somewhere?
So it says piracy is an act of robbery or criminal violence by ship or boat-borne attackers upon another ship with the goal of stealing. So here's the thing, folks. Legally speaking, the U.S. claims they got a court order because this vessel is sanctioned to seize it. That's what they're saying. So they went through the legal rigmarole to make sure they did this, quote unquote, legally. But of course, it's the open ocean. So it's a little bit different there. Maritime law, I don't know maritime law. It's a little complicated. So maybe if there's a lawyer in the chat, they could tell us. But they did it by the book, technically. So it's not technically piracy. I can see why some people might argue that. But at the same time, though, technically, going to war with Venezuela, you could argue that that's an illegal invasion or an illegal attack. But, we live in the real world. Sometimes things are done like this that are, quote unquote, justified. So me personally, I'm on the 61%. I think it is justified. Iran's been attacking all kinds of ships, commercial ships in the Strait of Hormuz by funding the Houthis. And if they're going to keep doing that and they're not going to stop, then this is pretty fair game to me. But Enforcer, what say you?
Allow me to reference, folks, U.S. Code 1703, the seizure and forfeiture of vessels, Section A. Whenever any vessel which shall have been built, purchased, fitted out in part or in whole, or held in the United States or elsewhere for the purpose of being employed to defraud the revenue or to smuggle any merchandise into the United States or to smuggle any merchandise into the territory of any foreign government in violation of the laws there in force, if under the laws of such foreign government any penalty or forfeiture is provided for the violation of the laws of the United States respecting the customs revenues, or whenever any vessel which shall be found or discovered to have been employed or attempted to be employed within the United States for any such purpose, or in any wise in assistance thereof, or wherever any vessel of the United States which shall be found or discovered to have been employed or attempted to be employed at any place for any such purpose, or in any wise in assistance thereof, if not subsequently forfeited to the United States or in a foreign government, is found at any place at which any such vessel may be examined by an officer of the customs, is in the enforcement of any law respecting revenue, the said vessel and its cargo shall be seized and forfeited. And it also goes through the additional definitions of what a vessel of the United States is. But by our law, here within U.S. Code 1703, you can actually see that there is a law on the books in the United States of America that if a foreign vessel is even involved in actions that are against our laws that we have declared is a violation, including ships on the sanctions list, the United States has a right to seize the vessel and to forfeit the ownership of that vessel from whoever owned it, as well as the cargo. So this does fall within U.S. law, and this is something that is on the books. That's what the court actually ruled on, if y'all don't know. And the court actually ruled the ship is on a sanctions list, the ship is in violation of U.S. law, and for that matter, the United States of America has a legal authority to seize the vessel, whether it's in our territorial waters or international waters. And as far as international waters go, the laws of a nation can extend into those international waters, not as a territorial sort of a sense, but on specific vessels. Like, for example, if we say we're at war with Iran, that means we can go around seizing and destroying practically any Iranian vessel flagged under the Islamic Republic of Iran in the entire world in international waters. It does not fall under piracy, it falls under legal acts of the Republic. So with that...
But if it was seized, if let's say it went into Venezuelan territorial waters and the U.S. conducted this operation while it was in Venezuela's territorial waters, would it technically be considered piracy at that point? Because it appeared to be the law was not written to include that scenario.
Technically, we would still be within a legal authority, but we would be violating the sovereignty of Venezuela, which would create a whole other can of worms. But that gets into diplomacy and statesmanship, or stateswork, or statescraft is really the better way to say that. That's when we start to get into a diplomatic spat with Venezuela. Legally, we would have the authority, even if it's in their waters, to go in there and take it, because they're technically aiding and abetting this vessel and violating the laws of the Republic. But at the same time, Venezuela could then make an issue out of that and say that we violated their sovereignty in the process. But then at that point, that's up to them to follow through with possibly going to war with us to right that wrong or to have us have a redress of grievances with them.
Yeah, honestly, though, looking at the bigger picture here, it really is a blockade. Like the U.S. has started a blockade on Venezuela. It is a full-on legitimate blockade at this point because they're saying they're going to seize more of these tankers. They have a target acquisition list that they've compiled together. So this is going to become pretty commonplace right here. So that'll probably have a deterrent effect on these vessels wanting to go to Venezuela to unload cargo. It'll probably have a deterrent effect where they simply just will not go, and they'll probably turn around and wait for something to change. I would imagine.
Oh yeah, we're going to have the same effect on Venezuela that the Houthis have on the southern Red Sea, most likely. And also, speaking of which, we have been able to hear that additional military forces have been moved into the area of Roosevelt Roads. According to information we got today, an undisclosed or indeterminate amount of F-35s from the U.S. Vermont Air National Guard will now also be moving into the area of the Roosevelt Roads Naval Air Station and joining in the operations against Venezuela. So we are going to be seeing an even larger presence of F-35s beyond the 10 F-35s that are present as a part of the U.S. Marine Corps' Air Aviation Wing that is present at Roosevelt Roads currently. So that's basically most, if not all, of the developments that we got out of Venezuela today. And additionally, we also heard, folks, right in our backyard, we moved just in time for the big news, folks. The big news! Yippee! There's a giant rare earth deposit that's been found here in Utah, just to the west of the Salt Lake, from what we know. A major deposit of rare earth and critical minerals has been uncovered in Utah, which the Wall Street Journal calls the most significant critical mineral reserve in the U.S. It's apparently even bigger than the one that actually provides half of the world's rare earth metals that actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's along the California border. I'm trying to remember exactly where. Dang, I don't think I'll be able to show you all that. But there is actually a mine here in the United States of America. It's a singular mine in California. It's built onto a rare earths vein, and crazy enough, folks, it accounts for about 50% of the rare earths ore extraction globally. So while the United States doesn't produce a large amount of refined rare earths, we actually do produce a significant amount, half of the world's rare earth ores. So there is now a new deposit that's been found in Utah, and that not only means more money for the state of Utah, but it also means that the United States will have an even larger access to rare earth ores. Not refined rare earths, however. That still is an issue. But moving
That's
on.
why we moved out here. That's why we moved out here to Utah, because I was trying to recreate the TV show The Beverly Hillbillies, moving from the South and then striking not oil but striking gold out here in the West. I was trying to recreate that. Then the guy became rich and stuff like that, and they created the whole song and the
Next
whole
thing
dance
you know,
and everything
Jeb's
like
a
that.
billionaire. Bang, ding, ding,
Yeah, next
ding.
thing you know, the only problem is we only missed out on one part of the plan, is we didn't buy any land where the gold was at. That's the huge problem here. So where Jeb and them moved out to Utah, and they're still broke. So there you go. We didn't quite recreate the show.
Next thing you know, Jeb is a broke ass YouTuber. Bang, ding, ding, ding.
Oh man.
Oh jeez. Oh man, I'm telling you. But anyways, I'm telling y'all folks, now I'm starting to get kind of like hooked on trying to find this mine. Let me just go pull it up. Rare Earths Mine USA. The Mountain Pass Mine, that's what we're looking for. The Mountain Pass Mine. Oh my god, I was so close. It was on the border. Dude, I passed right over this thing earlier. I literally did. I was like, oh, I don't think it's here. And it was. But this is the mine, folks. It's not even that big. That's the crazy thing about it. This mine is hardly large at all in size, especially compared to the one here in Salt Lake City, the Bingham County mine, which is a copper mine primarily. But this mine right here, folks, accounts for literally 50% of all of the rare earth ore extraction on the planet. Most of that ore is loaded up and then shipped off to China for refining. That's kind of where we have the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good right there. I like how we just ship our really valuable rare earths to China, the country that happens to be choking the entire supply of rare earths to the entire world.
Man, this is how they actually choke that. This is the crazy thing. We mine it. Mining it's actually quite easy and pretty self-explanatory. You literally just dig the stuff out. Then we load it onto a ship, and it gets sailed off to China, and then it gets dropped off on the coast. They pull out all the ore out of the ship with large cranes, basically, with giant shovels on them, and then they drop that off in a pile, and then they sit that in the refinery, and then they feed the ore through the refinery, and they refine it into actual ingots or slabs of rare earths that are actually refined into something usable. But then what China is doing now is saying that the rare earths that we mined out of the ground here in America can't come back to America if they're involved in anything to do with the defense industry. So they're putting restrictions on what our own rare earths that we mined and they refined can be used for in our own country. That's just nuts.
It's like playing Monopoly, and they just flipped the board on us and broke it in half.
Man, it's really stupid, honestly. But also at the same time, folks, rare earths refining is extremely nasty business. Like that is NIMBY territory to the nines. Like everyone says we ought to have a rare earths refining in America, but if you saw how polluting it was, everyone, no matter their political affiliation, would be in a riot if they heard that a rare earths refinery was going to be put near their city. So that's kind of why it's in China. But at the same time, folks, we have to address the strategic issue. It's a strategic blunder at this point. We have to have rare earth refineries, but we also have to figure out where they're going to be, because if they can't really be near a city, where are they going to go at that point? I don't really know.
We could put them in Maine.
Why Maine? Like, why Maine of all places?
I don't know. Like, I just felt like picking on Maine. We could put them there. But seriously speaking, though, it seems like, I'm not sure how feasible it would be to do this, since Alaska is like way off in the corner, but it's like, could we not use some land that's remote in Alaska to do that? Now obviously it'd be hard to like transport things to and fro, because you've got stuff that's really probably going to be pretty deep into Alaska wherever you're putting it, but I don't know. It's a tricky one. You really don't want to put that stuff near populated areas because China doesn't give a damn about poisoning their people. They don't care if they poison like 1,000 or 100,000 Chinese citizens. They could care less. But we don't want to do that here in America. So that's a tough call.
It'd probably be expensive, and also it might be logistically impossible because the railroad car shipments, because most of the ore is transported by rail once it gets on land. It can kind of be a little inconsistent based on the weather. So the refinery could be just run out of ore some days, and then that's a humongous financial loss for that refinery because usually refineries have to run, especially those on a near 24/7 basis, refining rare earths. So it probably would have to go here in the lower 48. And then that's the question: where does it go? Where, for one, is there a viable workforce for this plant? And secondly, where also will it not be causing giant NIMBY concerns?
Also, by the way, some people are saying, why don't we just put it in Nevada, where they tested all the nukes and stuff like that since the land's already jacked up? Well, they don't want to do that, but it's still an active testing ground. So we don't want to accidentally blast the place by accident because they still got there, and I believe they still test in some of these places. Now, some of it I don't think they do because you can actually go to some of those places, but a lot of Nevada, like Nevada is like defense testing central. So you really also don't want, refinery workers like going into that area either. So it probably wouldn't work in Nevada, even though it sounds like a decent idea.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a bad idea. I mean, honestly, folks, not to say this because we're in Utah now, but a pretty decent place for it would probably just be a remote region of Utah, honestly.
No, I don't support that.
I mean, there's a lot of unused land out here west of the Salt Lake. A load of it. It could go, and
Not really. I mean, that's all military out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's federal land. They just partition a little bit of the federal land to this refinery business. On the promise that they'll keep the refinery operational for 15 years or something like that, a contractual promise with the government for the land. Because it would be close, one, to one of the rare earths deposits in Utah at that point, and then secondly, it wouldn't be that far from the one in California either. So logistically, it'd be a quite simple system, and on top of that, it's not near anyone to cause any real issues at that point. So I mean, that's possible. I don't know if people would be a big supporter of that here, but I do know that it's remote enough and it's close enough to a larger urban area that there would be a workforce for it. It would probably be remote enough, and secondly, there is land available to give off to them to be able to build that refinery if they wanted to.
Maybe so. I just know we're running overtime.
Yeah, I know. Like, we're running way over time, but that's because of that South Korean helicopter talk. But dude, you were doing that, and I was talking about it, and I was just watching the clock tick away, and I was like, damn, I had this segment timed out tonight, folks, and that basically blew away the timing. But moving on from that,
well, the people were asking for it, and I believe in delivering for the people.
I believe in democracy. I believe in the will of the people. But the will of the people have actually pushed us over time, so we're going to pick up the pace a little bit, folks. Not a whole lot, though. We're still going to talk about the news in detail. First off, in the Pentagon, we were able to hear that the investigation into the Havana Syndrome is apparently now going to be sidelined. It's not going to be completely deleted, but it's being sidelined. They're going to be relocating internally and de-resourcing the cross-functional team that was investigating Havana Syndrome. So I guess we'll never get to the bottom of that one.
Yeah, that's a shame too. I can only imagine it couldn't be Russia of all people. It couldn't have been Russia doing the Havana Syndrome BS. So it's a shame it's getting disbanded. We wouldn't want to point fingers at Russia.
Well, it's not disbanded, Matthew. It's just that they're not going to be given any more resources to do their job. So technically, the investigatory team will still exist. It's just that they're not going to have any financial or material support to keep investigating the problem. So that's great. I guess whoever's going to be put in that position, they got a pretty cushy job. They get their annual salary, and they basically can do nothing at this point. But for the rest of us, we'll never find out what Havana Syndrome was, who was doing it, and how to really combat it. Additionally, we also heard that apparently we're going to be bombing Venezuela again pretty soon. This is 2 weeks after the last statement, by the way. Pretty much on the dot. No joke. Literally 2 weeks later, we're going to be bombing Venezuela on land again very soon. So I'm sure in about another 2 weeks, we'll hear another statement like that. And I'm pretty certain at this point, folks, because that statement was made, we're not going to be bombing them for at least the next 2 weeks. You know what's crazy, folks? We're probably going to bomb Venezuela, if we ever at all, next year, or we're not going to bomb them at all. So, yeah, that's pretty wild. Anyways, moving on from that, and out of the United States, it's now time for us to move on, folks, into the news that we got out of the Russian governments. Moving us on into Moscow, we were able to hear some very concerning developments from the Institute for the Study of War. They follow us. We have a lot of respect for the Institute for the Study of War. We follow them back. They are very good at their job, very well thought out and thorough think tank based out of Washington, and they have actually given us some tips and pointers in the past on some information and sources to work with. So, according to the Institute for the Study of War, Putin's new decree, which was made just the other day or two ago, which we actually talked about, would be allowing them to build up their forces, not only to continue the war in Ukraine, but build up a possible force to fight Europe with, will allow for an unlimited number of reservists to be put into the army in 2026. At the same time, no clear rules, and this was the important part, have been established regarding the participation of these conscripted reservists in combat operations. So because there's no existing clear rules on how they can be used, you can guarantee they're going to be used in combat service. Such a step provides an opportunity to quietly attract its strategic reserve and reduce military spending. So it does appear that the Russians are already taking a very concerted effort at mobilizing their reservists and putting them into army service to prepare for the continuation of the war with Ukraine and also an eventual war possibly with Europe. We have also heard that economically difficult times are going to be ahead. This is according to The Economist. Considering that their publication is called The Economist, I have a feeling that they have a pretty good beat on what the economy is doing in Russia. Oil and gas revenues have fallen by 22%. The momentum for military spending is fading, and the budget deficit is approaching 3% of GDP. Russia receives almost no foreign investment and has no access to international credit, except for Chinese arms production. Industry and military production have reached a high level. That's primarily importing from China and then putting a Made in Russia stamp on it, and the government is increasingly squeezing money from the Russian population to finance the war, including the new liquor tax at the liquor store. The economy's not looking good in Russia. We also heard that apparently Putin stated today, I order the continuation of combat operations in Ukraine to achieve our goals. Additionally, the chief of staff of the Russian Federation, Gerasimov, reported to Putin that the offensive of Russian troops will be expanded in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions. That doesn't sound like they're ending the war. That sounds like they're continuing it until absolute victory. Man, by the way, the U.S. government said that they're frustrated at both sides now. Not just Zelensky, crooked little Zelensky down there in Kyiv, who's all into, I think, what in the world did that guy call it, Matthew, that Medvedev guy, the booger sugar, I think is what he called it. But apparently Zelensky's not the bad guy now. Apparently it's both of them again. It's both of them again. But don't worry, folks. The pendulum will switch back to it's all Zelensky's fault, although Putin's the reason why everything's going so poorly. I gotta say, folks, the amount of disrespect that Zelensky gets these days from the U.S. government is absolutely unreal, considering that he's practically accepted every single U.S. demand and concession that we've been forcing Ukraine to give to the Russians until these last ones here, and we've just been disrespecting this guy the entire time while the Russians have rejected everything. It's absolutely lame, absolutely pitiful, folks. We also were able to hear as well today a pretty funny side of events that apparently, according to some Telegram posts that were made by the Russians, 2 people died in the explosion at Pnipu, which is the Perm Polytechnic University. So, let's give you all the information. According to preliminary information, a turbine wheel broke during testing of a product at a stand with specific equipment in a separate building of the Pnipu complex. Fragments of the wheel penetrated protective structures, and 2 people were killed. A man, the head of the company that manufactured the sample, non-employee of Pnipu, and his daughter. An investigation is currently underway to determine why she was on the site in violation of safety regulations, which is honestly unbelievable, because from what we understand, the daughter was actually a minor. We do not know her age, but she was actually killed by the fragment along with her father, who was the head of the company that was producing these parts. These parts, by the way, are used in most oil refineries in the Russian Federation. They're incredibly expensive and are supposed to be fine-tuned for high-level operations or high-intensity operations. 3 people were also injured as well, with representatives of one of the Perm enterprises and also another man as well, but both of those are in stable condition, and another victim refused hospitalization. So it does appear that at the moment there was a significant event that happened that led to the death of the head of a company that produces rare parts for the oil refineries that Russia desperately needs at this point, and unfortunately his daughter as well, which is very sad to hear. But moving on from that and out of the Russian Federation, it's now time for us to move on into Ukraine. And thankfully, folks, we don't have a lot of news in Ukraine today. It's mostly location unknowns, 1 combat clip, and then we move straight into Kyiv. Moving on into our location unknowns, we did hear that apparently the Ukrainians are pimping their rides. They got a BMW 7 Series grad launcher now. That's pretty sick.
Oh, the Ukrainians have that?
Yeah.
That's crazy. They must have had to install an extra trailer hitch for that. I didn't even know that was rated to carry something that heavy.
Man, they put this thing right on the bike rack. Man, like they
they added like the little portions, the little pylons that go out too to like stabilize the back. That's actually pretty impressive right there. That's very Slavic, by the way.
Very Slavic. I gotta say though that actually does go pretty hard. A grad launcher 7 Series BMW. We've actually seen these a decent amount in the war, folks. This is nothing new. It's just that we haven't seen a picture of one in ages, so it's really cool to see one.
Rumor has it they pulled up in the 7 Series with a missile launcher in the back, and they said, "I love it when you call me Big Papa." So, they pulled up the battlefield. They were pimping that car out.
Man, I gotta tell you, it's really cool. Pick goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. We also got to see the Ukrainian Bellator MMA champion Yaroslavl Amosov recovering his belt from his house, which has actually been liberated, and the house, of course, took significant damage in the midst of the battle. But he did recover his belt, and he is going to be going back into the fight at the ring here very soon in the MMA. So here he comes out of the basement with the belt right there. Man, he's like, do you know how many guys I had to beat to get into this house to get my belt? He's like, dude, the MMA is nothing to me.
In the 3 years to Dagestan and forget.
Dude, you saw that meme?
Yeah, I saw that one right there.
Send the Dagestan for 3 years and forget him. Man, I was like, yo. Anyways, we also got the Russian casualty report, which was absolutely wild today. 3 Bobcats.
Oh, 3 Bobcat skid steers. 1, 2, 3, I must admit, that's a pretty damn nice catch right there. 4,022. That's a hell of a number there. But tell us more.
Man, I gotta say, it is an incredible number. According to Miss Decent Keeper of the Records, 1,460 troops lost in a day is the highest lost since 1,530 on April 18th of this year. So the highest losses we've seen in 8 months straight. That is a lot of Russians. Vehicles have also increased today, and 3 Bobcats is very nice. And over the past 24 hours, 1,460 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 7 APCs, 157 supply trucks, 0 main battle tanks, 23 artillery pieces, 82 drones, and 1 MLRS, along with the 3 Bobcat skid steers. It was quite a good day. Unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of combat footage to show for that. We did see down in Zaporizhia, however, south of Stepnirsk, the Ukrainians launching some airstrikes on the Russians to hold them back. Hold me back, they say as they drop some bombs on them. Man, I gotta say, this is something else right here.
Not much left at this point. I guess they're just trying to raise the buildings to the ground.
Man, or lower them. But anyways.
Boy, it's spelled R-A-Z-E.
You know, Matthew, you know, I've heard of that term before, but I heard it as raisins before. And I
Raisin Cane. You gotta love him. He's a guy who knows how to get it done. They said Raisin Cane. They said it's not chicken. It's a good time. It's a good time and a hellish military. I'm telling you.
I gotta say, it's a great thing. But moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, we also, by the way, folks, don't have a speech from Zelensky, so thankfully we won't be going wildly over time. We're only like 40 minutes over time right now, so we're good. But beyond that, we were able to hear that Zelensky has made some statements today. Ukraine is ready to hold elections if a ceasefire is in place during the vote, which means that that's never going to happen. So additionally, we also heard that apparently, folks, because America is the land of the free, home of the brave, so, you know, we always make sure to represent the citizenry of the Republic. Apparently, the head of BlackRock is now involved in the peace negotiations. Why? Well, because, of course.
I remember electing that guy.
It's not about you electing him, Matthew. It's about you're a corporate wagey. So shut the hell up. We don't count. Like we don't count worth a damn. You see, it's BlackRock that really counts. It's not the will of the republic and its citizenry that counts. It's not that this country was built on democratic principles where the citizenry were supposed to have their voices heard and every vote and every man counts. No. If you have BlackRock behind the name of your CEO-ship, you get a place at the negotiating table. Now that's stupid.
Oh. Also, by the way, folks, just to be serious here for a second, for one thing, I will give a disclaimer. I'm not personally a huge fan of BlackRock, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but I'm not a huge fan of them. But to be fair, though, I think the reason why this fellow has showed up at the negotiating table is because BlackRock has been trying to get involved in trying to rebuild Ukraine when the war is over. So I'm not sure why he's at the negotiating table. That doesn't seem to be really necessary for that, because the war is obviously not over yet. There's no need to get too far ahead when the war hasn't even ended. But that's why I think they're there, at least allegedly. I think they're there to discuss what they're going to do to help rebuild Ukraine. But me personally, I have a strong aversion to billionaires having preference like those and showing up and also seemingly getting involved before the war is even over in having some seat at the negotiating table, which seems completely perverted, to be perfectly honest. It seems like they should not have CEO billionaires at a negotiating table that only our elected officials should be handling.
Extra-governmental citizens should not be involved in peace negotiations or at the peace table. That is something that is absolutely absurd. This would be like putting Mark Zuckerberg at the peace table. Why is he there? He's not a representative of the U.S. government. He's a representative of a private company. Why would he be involved in the peace negotiations? He can get involved in talking to Zelensky on some side meeting of his own, talking about how they're going to invest in Ukraine to rebuild the country. But that is not a part of peace negotiations, and this is absolutely ridiculous. I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. This kind of stuff is happening a lot with, like, buy certain types of electric cars. You know, let's have this guy at the peace negotiations. I gotta be honest with y'all, folks. I'm not really a big fan of that at all. Like, I don't care if people take that as political or not. This is absolutely un-American. It's not representing the wishes of the citizenry or the republic. It's representing the interests of a company, which, as far as I'm concerned, has absolutely no representation as far as the U.S. government's concerned. It's a corporate entity. It's not an individual, and it's not a representative of the citizens of the nation. But moving on from that, we are going to be getting into our last bit of news in Kyiv, where we were able to hear that Zelensky has fired back a peace proposal to the United States. Apparently, from what we know, they're not liking it, because everyone else's of Zelensky's guys liked it, which makes no sense, and they don't. So, you know, that's what's going on with that right now. So the U.S. will shoot it down. The Russians will, of course, be unhappy with it, and that's going to be that. So with that, folks, that is the end of the news for the day here on day 1387 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on, folks, into our second segment of the stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And I gotta say, folks, we are always very honored to know that so many people watch this show and consider it to be their primary source of news. We're always heavily appreciative of everyone spending humongous amounts of time listening to the news here. And I gotta say that tonight, apparently a lot of people found a lot of stock in the news. We had a peak viewership tonight of 13.5 thousand people, and 85,000 people have watched this stream in 2.5 hours, which is a humongous number of people. And we thank y'all massively for your time, and we hope that y'all stick around because we're about to be getting to talk to all of y'all, and we'll be talking about everything except for religion, politics, climate change, or whether the A-10 is relevant in modern warfare or not. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
We don't have a speech from Zelensky tonight. We have no speech.
Not that I saw. I went onto the website and they had no speech.
Damn, that's a shame right there. I really hate that for many different reasons, honestly. I wanted to hear from Zelensky. And number two, I just remembered I had a casserole in the oven. And could you filibuster for just 30 seconds to a minute while I go get the casserole out of the oven? No, I'm not really serious. That's code. That's code.
Oh, okay.
Casserole. But I'll be right back, though, if you can filibuster for just a second.
All right. And of course, we're going to be filibustering, folks. We're going to filibuster here for a little bit. And I see a lot of people talking about all kinds of stuff, for example, with the whole deal of BlackRock. And I just got to be honest with you, folks. Let me level with y'all here for a minute. In my personal opinion, now we're not all knowing oracles of wisdom here. Some people like to say that we are. We're absolutely not. But I'm going to give you my personal 2 cents on what I think about this whole situation that's going on right now with stuff like that. It is very un-American. Corporations and private entities have absolutely no role in U.S. governmental affairs in any way or shape. I do not like the idea of billionaires openly backing specific political parties and telling them generally what their policy ideas are or what they would like, and then clearly seeing them getting kickbacks or some sort of support from the current administration. I don't really like to see what's going on with the peace negotiations in Ukraine. The United States of America's government is elected by the citizenry of the Republic, and whether you're the CEO of BlackRock, the CEO of Tesla, or whether you're a janitor is somewhere in Missouri, every single person in this country only gets one vote, and the government ought to represent the entirety of the citizenry as if each and every single one of those people is equal, as they are equal through the vote. Each citizen gets only one vote, and that the government should represent the nation off of that sort of a principle, instead of what they're doing these days, which is absolutely abhorrent. It's not only happening in this administration, it happened in the last one, and I think that's incredibly detestable, and it should be denounced heavily by any official that has any spine within the U.S. government, and those actions should be curtailed from this point forward, and possibly even codified with some sort of punishments or reciprocal action that can be taken by the U.S. government for representatives who take actions to clearly show that they have some deference or larger support or are puppets attached to strings of some sort of a larger entity that is not representative of the citizenry.
Right, I do agree. Also, by the way, before we jump back into our super chats, let's go check out Flight Radar 24 because I've gotten fixated on Flight Radar 24. We actually have two different places to look at, by the way. Let's take a look at the Venezuelan coast. Currently, there's some activity, some U.S. Military activity off the coast on Flight Radar. And also, let's go back to South Korea and see what's happening there real quick as a quick status update before we jump into our super chats.
H-ball. Why is the screen going white? Oh, H-ball. We got H-ball. Bruh. Dude, they're gonna fly straight through the Roosevelt NOTAM area in a balloon. Man, that's crazy right there. This thing is...
I think that's a private owner. I don't think it's military.
Oh, yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. They're gonna fly straight through that NOTAM in a balloon.
Yeah, it's pretty stupid right there, honestly, for them. But also, by the way, Black Cat... maybe that's another Chinese balloon or something. There's no telling. But there's Black Cat right there, by the way. That's a Triton that's flying around. And where did it fly from, by the way? Where did they launch that?
Oh, it flew from Jacksonville.
Oh, wow. Flew all the way from Jacksonville. That's a long one. Oh, they got a little confused and squiggly there, like right as they took off from the coast. I sort of did a little loop-de-loo, but they eventually got down there, though. And we're hearing that apparently there was a Globemaster that just landed at Puerto Rico a while ago. Like, I think an hour ago, they landed at Puerto Rico, a Globemaster C-17.
Yeah.
We saw a Black Cat there. Triton was out there in the water, sort of circling around. Rather than that, I don't really see any other military activity other than that. I think people were overhyping that on Twitter earlier because I don't see much else happening.
I don't see much happening either. There's the drone, and that's basically it. Let me see here. What's the top tracked aircraft? Black Cat, and then this one. That's just an Air Europa. Why? I don't know why that one's being tracked so much. And then we've got this 747 that's near Hokkaido that's being tracked a lot. And that's basically it. Nothing else that really is working for the U.S. Department of Defense. So, you know, that's not really a lot of military activity. I thought we were going to see a whole lot. But let's move to Korea then. And let's see what's going on over here in Korea. So we've got this private jet here. That is a tiny private jet. Where did that come from? It flew from Seoul and it's flying back to Seoul. Huh.
They forgot they left their soul in Seoul, so they had to go back to retrieve it.
Man, they said, what will this flight cost you? It'll only cost you your soul. No, we mean like the city.
Oh, capital.
Okay. Man. Oh my God, look at the amount of helicopters.
I'm telling you, something's going on.
Special Rescue Service, the Army. That's just a normal civilian one. That's another Sikorsky. That's another civilian one. That's the National Police. That's apparently the National Police, and then another Army helicopter. So really just a load of helicopters. Not a lot of them are with the Army. And also, where did those maritime patrol aircraft go?
There's another one down there in Busan. Do you see that? Look, there's a helicopter in Busan. Look.
Breaking news! Breaking news! Oh, there's a Seahawk down there. Oh, it is. That looks like it might actually be conducting a pattern. This is very jumbled, folks, but it might actually be conducting a pattern. So,
It's doing a search pattern. Look, it's a search pattern.
Oh my God, it's flying in circles! Oh my God!
The rotors are turning.
Oh, look, it's moving! It's moving! But you know, those maritime patrol aircraft, they're gone.
Yeah, it
I
looks like
think
they are
returned
gone.
back to their bases.
Yeah, I guess so. Is that thing still lurking around the DMZ that we saw on the eastern side of the country?
No, it's gone. It's left.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm still saying I think it was an exercise. I think we'll hear that tomorrow.
We might. Usually they're pre-announced though, so that'd be kind of rare for them to just be like, oh, we like conducted an impromptu exercise that we didn't announce to, so the North Koreans would know. That would be interesting if they did that. Especially considering how weak this current administration is, considering that they don't want to escalate with anyone. You would think that they would pre-announce something like that because you know the North Koreans are going to go, oh, we didn't have that announced. Oh my God, Kim Jong-un stress eating, quick, like conduct a nuclear test or something. So you know, I don't know, but this army helicopter here, this thing's scooting on up there towards the DMZ, but not really.
You look at this. Bloomberg put out an article literally just 2 hours ago, and the headline says, U.S. general says drills absolutely needed as Korea floats shift. That literally came out 2 hours ago. So this could be like an impromptu drill or something. That would be extremely impromptu, like to say the least, but it maybe possibly could be, maybe.
It could be. Oh, look, Matthew, here's one of the patrol aircraft. Oh, look at that. It conducted this little pattern. It flew right back to Busan. It's actually down there on the tarmac right now.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, look at that. Tactical hex. That's when those witches and shit put a hex on you tactically, though, like in a war. They call it a tactical hex. I don't know much
You got to
about
make
it.
sure you have your man can and your AR-15, and you got to put that spell on it.
You gotta make sure to have enough coin.
Yeah.
or
Got that
the,
magical coin.
or the other one, you have to have enough treasure, like we're some pirates or something like that. Like
Arr, you
Yar.
get your booty.
I want. Yeah, ain't nothing like a duty part. But man,
I said Djibouti, man. It was a country.
Oh, I thought you said Djibouti. Oh, like yo.
Oh, no, no. What the hell? What the hell are you thinking about?
Bro, that's what you literally said. You said Djibouti.
DJI
DJI drones?
U2TI, something like that. I don't know how to spell Djibouti, folks, but that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, Djibouti.
I tell you, folks, I got that DJI drone, and then I got that DJI booty. Like, man, like these hoes must be from Iraq. The way they, man,
What the hell are you going on about?
Man, I'm just going. Gotta have them ribs. Bro, he's just gonna start like just bombing these out straight out. But let's see here. Oh yeah, there's that Seahawk. What else? Anything? Let's go look at Europa. Anything interesting going on over here? There's a private jet. This is actually it's not a private jet. Sorry everyone. That's actually a Mitsubishi CRJ. So not anything.
Mitsubishi.
Look, man, I'm trying to put in as many puns as I can. That was literally a pun. Like I said, Mitsubishi. Man, you're like, Mitsubishi, man. Get it right. But let's see here. Anything interesting going on in Europe? Anything at all? Oh. No. Anything interesting? Anything at all? What about this? Oh, that's an air ambulance. Cool. What's happening around Salt Lake City?
I'm here. There's not much happening right now. It's pretty quiet. I think I hear something. Well, I won't say that. Never mind.
Man, it's pretty quiet out here near the Salt Lake City area. There's a United Airlines flight coming in over Ogden right now. That's actually the way I came in every time I landed. I flew over Ogden and south towards the airport. I never came in the other way.
Is the T3RB showing up on radar over Dugway?
Is it? Let's find out. Huh?
Oh, man.
What's this? Oh my God. Did we just find a private jet of one of those like celebrity people? Because just flying to they wouldn't go to Boise. They go to like Jackson Hole or something.
Any activity over the testing site in Nevada?
No. Not that I see.
There's a couple of airplanes flying through right there. What's that one?
Alaska.
That's
and
American
Air.
Alaska. Okay, yeah, that's nothing crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing crazy there. Allegiant Air, you got the United Airlines.
Not that
Right.
you'd be able to see anything crazy anyway, because when the shuttle flights take off from Los Angeles, or not Los Angeles, from Las Vegas, they turn off their transponder when they get to like some point in Nevada, so you wouldn't be able to see them anyway.
You know, man, every time I look at United Airlines, man, I remember that time. It was like back in 2018. You remember it when it was like the damn battle royale on every United Airlines flight, and there was like fist fights going on like basically United Airlines flight every other day. You remember that time back then?
I think it was on a bunch of different airlines. It wasn't just United. There's people were going berserk.
Man, for some reason, man, I just remember it happened like mostly on United. I don't know what was up during that time, folks, because United, from what I know, is not a bad carrier at all. And for some reason, back in 2018, it's like the spirit of the WWE possessed so many people, and they were just slugging it out on these planes. It was the craziest thing. And the videos would come out like every other day, and it was like, what the hell was going on these airplanes to get people like that? I will say though that economy class does get people pretty riled up, just as it is, because it's so cramped back there. But you know that like I still don't know what was happening back then. Because people were just going at it. What's Matthew, I wonder what's going on over Alabama. Man, there are so many little
Nothing but
planes.
trouble.
There are so many little planes over Alabama, man. I mean, like that's basically private jet. An embryo
Little guppy jet. Look at that thing.
And then we got this FedEx Caravan. Whoa! That's actually a super cargo master. I've never seen one of those in America before.
That's unusual.
Yeah, it's doing a little shuttle hop from Huntsville to Memphis. That's pretty wild. And then another one from Columbus to Memphis, and then they got an Ameriflight heading to Chattanooga from Laredo. I've never heard of that.
That's a sob.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Man, honestly, man, Alabama's kind of got like, look, another feeder. I didn't even know that FedEx had this many of them flying around here, like in Alabama. That's crazy. I never knew that. That Cessna 310 kind of looked whack, but those are actually kind of normal. And then a Diamond Star that took off from Montgomery. Wow, I don't know who in the world has that kind of money in Montgomery, but another one.
Isn't that a plane for learning in it?
I don't know actually. I thought this was kind of like a light sport plane almost.
It says Lift Academy.
Man, Lift Academy. Yeah, it must be for that. An American Airlines flight, a FedEx flight. Man, isn't it crazy, man? Pretty much all of the planes flying in Alabama's airspace right now are like air cargo related.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Nobody wants to fly around Alabama at night.
Man, honestly, man, flying over Montgomery at night, that's like being in a B-17 bomber over Munich in 1943. Like, man, you see like the tracers coming up from the ground and everything.
I tell you, you gotta watch out. That place is like a war zone at night.
Man, I tell y'all, folks, Birmingham was rough, but honestly, folks, in my mind, Montgomery will always be the roughest. Right down there, right now, folks, they're on the perimeter of Maxwell Air Force Base. The Air Force security guys are. We got the perimeter held down. We're in a firefight. We need air support. It's like every single night. Like it was crazy. It's really bad out near Maxwell, by the way. That's like where it gets really, really bad. It's bad through the whole city, but out here on the western side of Montgomery. The west side was the worst side of the city, like to the point you never go out there. But man, I got to tell you, man, those are the days. Those are the days. Someone say, "Hey, Montgomery isn't terrible." What part of Montgomery are you in?
Awful. Montgomery's awful. Like I'm not even gonna mince words on that. Montgomery was terrible.
Montgomery was nightmare fuel, really. I mean, we came from there. People were dying down there every day. Like it was every day and every other day. People were getting killed down there over stupid stuff. Like there was gang shootings going on. There was a huge amount of gang presence there. Massive amounts of crime. I mean, Montgomery is pretty bad. Like Birmingham was bad, but Montgomery was worse. And it's a lot smaller of a city, which is the wilder thing about it, is that you would think the smaller a city is, the less crime it has, but Montgomery is like crime central, like turbo crime. I mean, hell, even the mayor got held up at gunpoint. Well, he wasn't the mayor yet, but he was about to become the mayor, and he got held up at gunpoint at one point in the city. I mean, if the mayor gets held up at gunpoint, folks, and they're robbing a sandwich store, I mean, it wasn't even like a place that really has any money. Like, when the hell has anyone heard of a loaded cash register in a sandwich store? And they're robbing a sandwich store. Like, if someone's doing that in that kind of a city, that tells you it's a pretty rough place. Anyways, with that, folks, it's time for us to get on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our super chats, we do have a 20 once again from Renegade Preppers UK. And thank you very much, Renegade Preppers, for that $20 support once again. And he said, also, here is another one, just for some extra coffee and chickens, lads. And take a question from the chat on us and LOT, LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the second support of the night, Renegade Preppers. And thank you so much for the support for some extra coffee. We love that bean. And I gotta say, Costco chicken, truly incredible. I love me some Costco chicken. Costco chicken makes the world go round. So, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I've got to say, because folks like you helped make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And before we take that live chat, I just saw the person say where they're at in Montgomery. That's not like, that side of town isn't too bad. But the parts of town that we were always in when we were in Montgomery were the north side, the central side, and kind of like almost towards the west side, but mostly the northern side. So the place that you're at, I'm not going to say it on air, but the place that you're at, I know where that's at, and that's probably like the nicest part of the town. So, you know, I mean, yeah, I could see where you're like, it's not that bad because you're in the nicer part, but we were never in the nicer part. We were mostly like in the halfway home to west side. So anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. Oh, but
And
we actually got to get that live chat. Sorry, I just jumped the gun there.
And we are grabbing that live chat question, which goes to ASD. He said, "Hello from Finland, and I'm a sergeant in the Finnish military. And what do you think? How would NATO react if there was an incoming attack straight to Finnish land?"
And also really cool that you're here, and a great question. It's hard to say because in theory, what should happen is that Article 5 should be invoked and we come to the defense of Finland militarily. In real life, I don't know what would happen because I don't really know if European countries would just be like, we're going to provide them moral support. Like, they could do that, and the U.S. could just completely dip and not do anything. So in real practice, at least in what should happen, everyone should react with full force and help to defend Finland, and not only that, open up other fronts against Russia to divert their manpower out of Finland and elsewhere. But in real practice, it could end up in a million different ways because current leadership throughout most of the area, it's it's not really that good. In the United States, it's quite bad, but in Europe, it's also fairly scared and somewhat cowardly from country to country most of the time. But with that, I hope that has addressed that live chat the best we can. And before we move on to the next one, folks, we got someone here right now. And MMP said, "Damn, I'm off to Maxwell, and now I'm feeling like I have to stay on base as much as possible. My condolences to you." It's bad out there. Everyone who ever goes to Maxwell, they're like, it was a hellhole. And what's even crazier, folks, this is the irony about it, is that Maxwell Air Force Base actually has a federal prison on it, and it's even safer than the city around. Like, it's actually got a prison in there, and people would rather be closer to the prison on base than they would be getting off of the base and going into the city. So, a little bit crazy. Also, by the way, another fun fact, folks, is that back in the day, before Montgomery kind of became what it is today, it actually was kind of a moving and shaking kind of a place, because Maxwell Air Force Base, or at least the Maxwell Field, was actually where the Wright brothers went to demonstrate the Wright Flyer Type A to the U.S. Army. Way back then, we actually have a little statue of that here in the city, right here. That's the Wright Flyer Type A. This is the one that they actually sold to the Army. Is that a marmot?
Don't play the video.
I think that's a marmot.
Could be a nutria.
Could be it. Bro, you love that word. It could be a nutria. Man, isn't that like a little like a health bar, a nutria?
I don't know. Notice it looks scared though. It's like burying its head into the side of the wall.
Man, it's like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home.
Someone brought me here and left me here. I don't know where I am.
Man, you know, remember that one time, man, that the law school brought us down here to that museum in the middle, like that open air museum in the middle of the summer. It was 100 degrees with 100% humidity, and everyone was boiling to death because nobody expected to do that. And so everyone got back on the bus and they said, y'all didn't show enough respect, so y'all are gonna have to take longer at the next one while we're spending like 40 grand a semester. It's like, what the hell? It's like, What do you mean show more respect? It's like, do you understand how hot it is out there? They had to have a dude out there, literally, folks, in the middle of this museum handing out ice water in cups because it was so hot that they were scared people were going to drop dead in their own outdoor museum of heat stroke from how hot it was. And then they were complaining we weren't out there long enough. It's like they were inside the air-conditioned building the whole time. I was like, this isn't public school. This is law school, and we're paying an ungodly amount of money to just try and be here. So it's like, it's like if we kind of speed up through because it's burning hot outside, there's probably a good reason. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address the whole Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama thing somewhat well. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Dave Hesla, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Dave, as well, for that generous support. Very generous, actually. He said, awesome channel.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And thank you for saying that it's an awesome channel. I got to thank you massively for enjoying it, Dave, because if it wasn't for folks like you who supported this channel, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality every day. We work incredibly hard on this channel to make sure that we put out the most well-researched and well-thought-out and thorough news that we possibly can. And it's thanks to folks like you that we're able to keep our lights on and eat some Costco chicken to refill our bellies and to keep working on the show every single day as a living. And so humongous thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $20 support from Renegade Preppers UK once again. And he puts in another 20. And thank you very much, good sir, for the third support of the night. He said all audio issues seem to be fixed after a refresh.
Yeah, it seems as though it was a YouTube issue because it didn't seem that we were having any issues on our end at all. It's a little unfortunate to see that that was happening for a lot of people, but good to know that it was finally fixed. And a humongous thanks to you so much once again for supporting the channel. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $30 support from none other than Marion Deemert, another longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support of the $30 support. And Marion said, take care of yourselves. Snow is no joke. Hugs.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Marion Demon. And thank you for being an old guard and a channel legend, by the way. And we will try and take care of ourselves. Snow is no joke. I've actually been thinking, folks, because I've been getting a little bit concerned about the snow, of emailing the hot dog man and asking him if he wanted to come down here and snort it off the streets. But I decided against that because I don't know. He might start another beef, a rapper beef. Wait till. Another hit piece. But beyond that, I get... Oh, man, you didn't have to do me like... Oh, man, I'm telling you. I get no respect around
I always
here.
take that personally. I was doing that about the joke.
man, I like, dude, whenever I hear that, man, I think... I don't know if a lot of people agree with me, but usually I take that as, like, a joke flopped. Like, I think that's how most people would take that.
That was like a womp for the hot dog, man. That was, the joke you were telling me.
How do y'all take that? Because that confuses the hell out of me every time he does that. I'm not, like... I take it as the joke flop. Like, I don't know if... y'all take it that way, but I always take it as the joke flopped because I've never heard that done for a good joke. So like, every time I hear it, it throws me off because I'm like, I don't know if he's doing it over the punchline or the joke itself being bad, and I'm not really sure.
You're getting in your feels over the womp. No, the trombone comes out. The play force gets in his feels.
No, I'm not getting in my feels. It just throws me off my tempo there because I'm like, I don't know if he's like bombing my joke or if he's like bombing the punchline. I don't know. But anyways. With that, beyond that, I'd have to say, folks, we'll see about trying to take care of that snow. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you so much once again for support, Marion Demon, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, people were saying yes, it flopped. So I wasn't trying to say his joke flopped. By the way, also I didn't think the joke flopped. I thought it was pretty good actually. But anyway,
like everyone's taking it the way I take it, man. Everyone's taking it as your.
Well, I don't think they're taking the. They're not taking the sound effect that way. They're saying the joke flopped.
Well, I mean, the sound effect only adds to the insult, like the injury, like it's insult to injury. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Well, his jokes are good jokes. But our next one here goes to Tulsa Tater, who puts in, say what?
Well, actually, I'm reading them here really quick. Someone says it's usually for a flop joke. Someone says it's not for you, Andrew. It isn't, but it always throws me off because that's the default reaction I think everyone would have to a womp womp. It's like, is it for the joke? Like, is it for a bad joke? But everyone seems to be in agreement that sound effect's generally only played when a joke flops to really add to the effect that it flopped. So, I thankfully, folks, I always thought I was crazy because Matthew was telling me that it was for the punchline, and he is doing it for the punchline, but I've always taken that as the joke is flopped, like just completely flopped, and then it's being amplified on air that it flopped, and I'm always like, I don't know, I'm like, that's a very interesting sort of a sound effect to use. But with that, we're on to the next one.
most people don't care, like they're just listening. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Tulsa Tater, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Tulsa, for that $20 support. And they said, for the Enforcers Costco Chicken Funds, LSA, and I support Enforcers for USA President and Vice President and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for supporting the Enforcer and Enforcer Man for President and Vice President in 2040. And I gotta say, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we hopefully wouldn't be able to keep it running all the way up until 2040. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Pianfar, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. He said, thanks for doing what y'all do.
Hey, and thank you so much for helping us to do what we do. It's folks like you who go out of the way to support the channel, that help to make the entire thing possible and to keep the Leech Spring Army rolling round. And I gotta thank you massively once again for that support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to continue to make it possible well on into this day. So, with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 10. And Robert said, good evening, Enforcers and LSA, and not much, but a little something for snacks.
Hey, I think it's a great deal to us. We thank you massively for the support, and we thank you for supporting the snack fund, because folks like you help us to keep snacking. And really quickly, Matthew, what is your favorite snack?
My favorite snack, let's see. That's a tough one. I mean, maybe... well, what's a favorite snack? Name off some snacks.
Shoot, I don't know what you eat, man. Like, I don't know what you eat. Like,
only the best. Only the best. I'm trying to think here. Honestly, I don't do a whole lot of snacks. I'll be totally honest, Robert, because the snacks, like I was mentioning the other day, are kind of on the steeper side. I usually just do, usually like a
a dimmadome? Like
Jimmy Dean, not Demi Jean, but I usually do a Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwich, if I can speak for the Lord's sake at this point. A Jimmy Dean breakfast sandwich is what I have for breakfast. I'll have a cup of coffee with it and maybe a water. Definitely water. I need water. But then I'll skip lunch. I'll go straight to dinner. And I'll usually get something for dinner that's usually very, very heavy that will hold me over for the rest of the night. That's usually what I do. And in between, maybe a banana or something like that, possibly. Maybe like a little one of those little cheese things, like the little individual cheese packet or something like that. But I don't really do a whole bunch of just snacking. But unfortunately, what say you?
You know, honestly, I was hoping that you'd have an answer, because I don't really do a lot of snacking either. Who the hell can snack in an economy like this these days? It's like, honestly, like, there's no snacking to be had. It's too expensive. But if I had to say that I snacked on anything in particular, it probably would be, this is going to sound really lame, but it's probably something like that, because they're cheap, and they're numerous, and it's just something to chew on. So probably saltines. Wait a minute, hang on. Are we lagging here? What the hell's going on here? Oh, we're kind of lagging a little bit.
Yeah, we just lagged. I think that's on your end right there. Because can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think you're lagging on your end, because mine was perfectly fine. The stream was buffering on YouTube too.
Yeah, I just saw that. It like, man, one night, man, right after we got off air and I got off the call with you, like, my internet went down. And I had to go check why, and it was because of internet maintenance. I was like, what the hell? I was like, what the hell's going on here? I was like, if we had been on air any longer, like, the show would have literally bricked, because I was getting like 20 megabytes a second or something, because the internet was down for repairs. I was like, what in the world? I was like, what the hell? But anyways, beyond that, I do got to say that as far as a snack, if I had to pick a snack, I'd probably say like those little blocks of Tillamook cheese, honestly, like the little slabs that you get that are individually wrapped. That's probably a favorite snack of mine recently, beyond saltines, just to make it a little bit more interesting than a saltine cracker. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Shaniznit, who puts in a 10. And they said, y'all should have a screen to put up when YouTube audio goes down, and can't tell people to refresh if the audio is down, but they can see it for a split second. And much love, LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. And generally, we just send it through the live chat, just in all caps, refresh your stream to get it across to people. Because we actually don't really know when the audio is lagging. And also, it's kind of like a person-to-person basis sort of a deal with their connection to the server and everything. So, mass message, it's not that bad of a move, but we'll just continue to do it through the live chat. Probably that'll probably be fine. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, we've got bots back in here again. I don't know why they're showing up like this tonight, but the bots are back. So I'm getting rid of that one right there that was doing that goofy stuff. They're jumping in here and trying to attack the hell out of Europe again tonight. So the bots are busy. But jumping back into our next one here, this one goes to Robert Betancourt, who puts in a 10. And Robert said, do you think the 80-year-old Civil Air Patrol will use Archer Aviation as a pilot trainer?
They might. I'm not really sure. I don't really know too much about the civilian air patrol or the civil air patrol. I don't really know a great deal about it, so they might, but I would generally have to declare ignorance on that because I just don't know enough about the subject matter of the topic to be able to come up with a clear conclusion as to what their doctrine or eventual procurement plans will develop into. But a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a 10. Merry Christmas to all. And can we get a chat question and LSA?
Hey, and a Merry Christmas to everyone. A big thanks to you for the support. And I got to say, we will get a live chat in your honor. And I mean your honor. Not anyone else's honor. It's on your honor. So you better be accountable. I'm just kidding with you, by the way. But, Matthew, what do we got for a live chat?
All right, and this one right here is going to go to JG. And he said, why aren't these countries cranking out drones to stop Russian aggression?
Mostly because they just don't really have the manufacturing base to do that yet. It takes a while to build out the expertise, knowledge, and also investments needed to be able to mass produce drones, and most European countries are very slow to the curb on getting the investments needed to start the process of building up a skilled labor base and also an assembly plant to be able to conduct those sorts of operations. So that's generally the reason why at the moment. So I hope that does address that well. A big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, so we'll have to reread that question again. That's a little bit weird that's going through these sorts of issues. But anyways, can you reread that again, Matthew, really quickly?
Also, are we definitely back? Because it looks like it's still buffering.
Oh, we are so back.
Okay, so back to Tulsa's super chat here. He said, what is your take on a Russian general sending his daughter to Paris for vacation in enemy territory?
Very Russian thing. Putin's daughter is actually, I believe, in Switzerland somewhere at the moment. So it's a very Russian thing to send their folks abroad and have them just live in Western countries because they hate us because they ain't us. They want the good life, but they also don't want to admit that we have the good life, not them. So I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, it looks like Down Detector is reporting a bunch of video streaming issues right now, so that's probably why we're having issues. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Seti, who puts in an 8, and said he requested the Moscow people to leave out pickle on plate overnight, offering of peace for Santa Zelensky and magical Christmas drones.
We have to have more pickles, real pickles, long-lasting pickles. But a very interesting sort of a proposition there to the citizens of Moscow. Do they have pickles? I don't know. Are they going to buy them, though? Maybe. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And also, folks, I got to ask, what does this area look like right here? Oh, my goodness. There's a rail-served industry right there in the middle of this residential development. Man, that sucked to live near.
Maybe next time in Moscow.
Maybe next time in Moscow, they'll actually make the place look good.
And then over here, we've got the industrial zone hidden behind what appears to be a blast barrier. It's not a soundproofing wall. That's a blast barrier, it seems. What the hell is rail served? Wow. Wow, that's crazy. So there's a rail yard right here. And then not only that, there's a rail-served industry right in here. Right here, actually. That's insane. Like, right near a residential area. Can y'all imagine that? living near that, and they have to interchange the cars in the middle of the night. You're going to hear a lot of clanging, smashing, and everything else going on out there in between the couplers and stuff while they're trying to do that. That's unreal. And these people live in these apartments right here. That's Moscow, folks. That's Moscow for you. You wouldn't see that in Washington D.C. I can promise you that. But man, every time.
Also, by the way, I want to make a note real quick. Someone came in here a minute ago, and we get this occasionally. Like, it's not very often, but we get it occasionally. Someone said, "It's nice to know you two keep North Korea up to date by telling everyone where our guys and girls are. Loose lips is what you two have become." Okay, I'm not going to go through, like, obviously I'm kind of aggravated by that comment because it's stupid, but everything we say on the air is public information. If we ever have heard something that is not public, then we're obviously not going to repeat it on the air. But we don't repeat stuff like that on the air because we're obviously not trying to violate OPSEC. But if we pull up a site that is public, like Flight Radar 24, and we say there's a helicopter here or over here, that's a public website, which means the Russians, the North Koreans, everybody can access it if they know how to get on the site. So it's not something secret or something like that. So I don't even understand why that person said that. I think Epic Trans Canada is right. I think they are rage baiting me, and I think I got rage baited on that one.
They might be rage baiting, or they might be legitimately stupid. And honestly, folks, the line between a rage baiter and someone who's truly stupid is actually a very fine line. Like, some people are actually just that stupid, like we would disclose classified information. And every once in a while, folks, someone, and I will say that they are quite goofy, from the armed forces will say something that they're not supposed to say, and then we don't say anything about that at all. We just completely bury it and never mention it. But it's like with stuff like this, like Flight Radar, literally anyone can pull that up. The North Koreans could be on that right now watching everything. It's not like they're saying, look, we infiltrated a U.S. military base and we know the exact building that all the bombs are in right now. Like, it's not like that. That's an operational security violation. Showing an aircraft that's literally on Flight Radar 24, you would have to be stupid to think that that's giving away anyone's position, considering that it's public and it has an active transponder that anyone could pick up, because a transponder is literally screaming, "I'm right here," for any aircraft that has one on. Very stupid person. And I gotta say, folks, that might be a rage baiter. That might be someone who was legitimately stupid. But I'll be honest with y'all, folks. I really don't give a damn what they think. But anyways, I didn't mean to put that out that brutally, but that's just the honest truth. But anyways, also, Mandy, I wonder what this is out here. This strip of water. This is like a rowing. It's a rowing competition thing.
Oh, they really need that. That's what they really need.
They always needed one of these. Like, whenever you looked at Moscow, you went, what could we have next to the Moskva River, which is covered in green algae shit? Well, we could always use a rowing competition, site. Yeah, it's a great idea. What is this place, anyways? That's a ski.
It's the Ledoi Devorets Krikalski. Also speaking of rowing, I was looking at Utah Lake down there. I was like, Utah Lake looks like a nice place you could go kayaking on, or something like that over here in Utah, like locally. I was like, it looks pretty nice down there at Utah Lake. So I was like, maybe a kayak would be neat to go out on that, like a little inexpensive kayak to go out in the water. But it turns out that because the winds blow so hard down there near Utah Lake, apparently the water gets really choppy. So if you have like a basic kayak or something, it apparently gets pretty rough out there. So they suggest that you have like one of those like kayaks that are like built for the ocean. I'm not sure if like everybody's going to agree with that or not. If the kayaks, some other people maybe be like, oh, you don't have to have a big one. But I was like, maybe that's not a great idea. Like I might pass.
man, is gonna be out there in this kayak. Yar, the seas are rough, Captain. We're about to capsize. Like he's trying to row against the waves. Man, honestly, man, I would be scared to get in Utah Lake because I think it's deep enough. Well, any body of water like that's deep enough that if you capsized, you might actually just drown out there because it's big enough.
I mean, you'd wear a life jacket. You wouldn't just go out there without a life jacket or something. But some people are saying it's toxic. I don't know how toxic the thing is. I've seen some people in it, like actually swimming in it. So I don't know if maybe they're disregarding, maybe it's toxic or something. I'm not really sure.
Man, you don't see the aftermath when they're laying on their couch in their house going, "Come here, my young child. I have very little time. I swam in Utah Lake, like, and it's over for me, son. Come here and dictate my final words." You don't see that.
Hey,
part.
yo.
like, dictate your final words very
No,
common?
I wasn't saying that about that. I was like, I had punched in as Utah Lake toxic. I'm sorry, it kind of sounded like I was saying that about what you were talking about.
Yo,
But,
like,
but I was reading here. It says Utah Lake can be toxic due to frequent and sometimes severe harmful algae blooms, also known as HABs, caused by blue. What the hell's wrong with me tonight?
bling,
Caused by
bling.
blue-green algae. Damn. But so apparently it can be toxic. Let's see here. Utah Lake Recreational Water Monitoring. This is their official site right here. November 1st. Let's see. Monitoring will resume in June or July. Oh, so they don't monitor it right now, apparently. Interesting.
Man,
So this says be careful. That's so much generic advice ever. Be careful.
has anyone gone down on the 111 on down on the big lake they call Utah Lake? Has anyone told of the story of Enforcer Matt and his kayak? Man, you could make Whitefish Bay, man, when that storm came in here on Utah Lake in a kayak. Honestly, man, I wouldn't get in a big lake like that. I would stay really close to shore, or I probably wouldn't get in it. And also,
Wait, like there's sharks in it or something?
no, it's just that if bad weather, if you didn't expect bad weather, or bad weather suddenly forms and you're deep out there in that lake, you've got to be a pretty fast sort of a boatman at that point to get back to shore before the waves get really bad, and you're also out there in the rain and your kayak's filling up with water. You got to bail it out here and there by hand. Like, I wouldn't want to be out there in that sort of a situation.
I think a little adversity toughens people up a little bit. Like it's always good to have a little adversity from time to time.
Not that kind, like not the kind in water, man. Like adversity in any other kind of situation, sure, but in water, absolutely not.
I want to be like that Winnie the Pooh. You know how he was like got the bucket and was trying to bail out the little cherries floating in the flood, the great flood,
yeah.
the 100-acre wood. I want to be like him. I want to have a little adversity, make you grateful for what you have if you survive something like that. It's like a good reminder.
Man, shoot, man, man, I'm going to be on here on the channel. I regret to inform everyone that Enforcer Matt passed away from an unfortunate kayaking incident on Utah Lake.
I won't pass away. I survive that kind of stuff. I'm like a cockroach. They can put me out there in the roughest waters. I'll make it through it. They can put me out there, people. I'm ready to go.
Man, honestly, man, you know what I'd do though? I'll be honest with you, man. I would kayak down that Jordan River that's in the middle of the city.
Now that is a bad idea. That's some fast moving water.
Yeah, that's why you do it, man. The water would carry you all the way. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you fall in though, you're going to be in foul shape, especially if you know how to swim.
No, it's not that deep. It's only like a few feet deep. It's like I think it's like calf deep or so. It's not even that deep.
Man, if water is moving fast enough, just like a couple of feet's like enough to like finish you off.
I don't honestly, man. I'm kind of built different. It's not going to finish me off. I'm going to finish the water off. That's just how it works.
A word.
A word, bro. Like I'm throwing hands if that thing tries to take me down. I'm gonna be slamming fists into that river. But beyond that, man, it's something else. It's something else here with this river. Also, what in the world's up with all these little? Am I seeing the government's targeting data here? Like for all these? Do you see what I'm seeing, Matthew?
Yeah, why are some places like outlined with a red outline around it?
I don't know.
Is it detecting buildings or something? What's going on?
I don't know.
It's going away when you zoom in.
Well, no, it's actually getting better. Well, yeah, it does go away, and then it goes away when I zoom out enough. What if we go to downtown, Solly? What's going on up here? Oh man, the Capitol building, the Legislative Auditor General's building is apparently being targeted or something. I don't know what's going on with this. This is weird though. I have never seen this before on Google Maps. That's bizarre. Look, it's not.
Yeah, I don't want to see it anymore.
Hold up, what's going on up here? That's quite interesting. Nothing in the Temple Square is being, except for this one little thing right here, is being highlighted.
Also, by the way, folks, like since we were speaking about kayaking, I'll be honest with y'all. I want to go skiing so bad, but I just can't get over the cost of skiing. I've kind of like given up on the idea of going to ski. It's just too damn expensive. Like I've told y'all yesterday, I got the bicycle, and honestly, I'm having a blast with the bicycle, going around and exploring the place on that. But I'm like, the bicycle is like a one-time cost. Like you get the bicycle, it's not that bad. It hits the wall at one time, and you're done with it. But it's like skiing, you got to pay to go back. You got to pay for the skis. You got to pay for the the clothing. Then you got to pay for the parking. I'm like, I mean, that's like a money pit. I'm like, I would love to try skiing, but that's just like too much money going down the drain for that.
Man, I mean, I'll be honest with y'all, folks. There's this company here that owns all of the mountains. It's called Vale. And apparently, from what people have been doing documentaries about in this area, they have jacked up the prices of skiing so much that you practically have to take out a mortgage on your house to go skiing now. And then you also got to
Allegedly.
well, I mean, like allegedly, but you know, you can look at the ticket prices now, and you can look at the ticket prices in like the early 2000s, and there's a significant difference. And then on top of that, they have like lines up there at these mountains that are like 5 hours long. I was seeing videos of that, like from last year, well, not last year, but the year before last year, and there were like lines up there, folks. There were like hundreds of people deep for the lifts to get up to the top of the hill. I was like, oh my god, you got to wait hours to just go down the hill once. And I was like, and you're paying that much money? I was like, I don't know. Like, I was like, I don't think we might do that.
Yeah, honestly. Also, by the way, Randy said, Matt, you need to add a battery to that bike. It's lazy guy biking. I actually looked, Randy, at the e-bikes. The problem is, though, I saw the price on the e-bikes, and I was like, holy cow. I'm like, this is motorcycle money
$5,000, yeah.
for e-bikes. I'm like, I am absolutely not spending that kind of money on an e-bike. Absolutely not. I'm like, that's wild. Like, I will never spend that much money on a bicycle. Not happening. So I went with just a normal bike. It's basically like, it's like one step up from a Walmart bike, basically. I didn't want to get a Walmart bike, though, because I've had, you know, they're kind of like a hit and a miss with those. So I wanted one that was like a tier up from that, and that's what I went with, and it works pretty good. Also, measurements that e-bikes are not allowed. I will admit, though, I did ride on the e-bike, though, like when I was checking out my bike I eventually got, the normal one. Those are fine. Like, if you have the money to spend on an e-bike, those things are luxurious. So, I mean, that's nice. It's almost like it's like a little mini motorcycle that doesn't have the motor and the gas mill and all that stuff with it. It's actually pretty solid.
It was pretty cool. It was pretty neat. But I think that bicycles are made for exercise, and the e-bike kind of defeats that. It's more so like a daily commuting vehicle at that point, since it's got the electric motor. That really helps out a lot. But you know, like still, I think bikes are cool. I'm gonna get one here in a bit. But you know, I'm kind of sitting on it at the moment, just kind of like biding my time here. I'm kind of trying to wonder if I really want one or not. Really is the honest truth. But still, Matthew's having a blast with his, and it's starting to encourage me a little bit to possibly get one. Maybe we'll bicycle around together. But
I'll tell you what, you got to go far. I've been doing 5+ miles a day on that thing, going up inclines and stuff like that. The first day I had it, I went 10 miles. Today I did about 5 or 6. And honestly, like, I'm surprised. I think the running and getting active out here since we moved here has actually helped, because my legs feel shredded like for an hour afterward, but they feel fine after that. Like, I'm not like crippled. If I'd have gotten on a bike and done 6 miles in Alabama in the shape I was in there, I would be basically crippled the next day, completely screwed when it comes to walking. But I'm not really having that problem out here, to be honest.
he's adjusted to the altitude, folks. He's becoming dangerous each passing day. Like, he's acclimating, and he's growing in his abilities. Like, honestly, it didn't take a lot, though, to get used to the altitude out here. It took maybe like 2 weeks, and then honestly, I haven't really felt that much different than I was back in Alabama. But you know, a place that's really cool, folks, is Midway. Right here, Midway. Not the Battle of Midway out in the Pacific, but this little town right here. I went through it. Oh, look, the targeting data is also available here.
Target sighted. Alert.
But beyond that, when you go down here into this town here, folks, it's like a Christmas town. I'll show y'all. Let's see. Well, where's the town hall? Is it down here? I think it's down here, fellas. Yeah, here's the town hall. Look at that. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it is pretty cool right there.
Man, it was a cool place. And then they had this little restaurant over here. And I don't know if you saw this, Manny, but they had these little bubble enclosures around the tables that were outdoors. Like, you were eating in like a little glass bubble thing. It was actually pretty cool. Let's see. It's this one, I think. Let me see. Yeah, I think it is this one. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is, the little bubble deal. Like, see that bubble deal? Like, they had those around the tables. I was like, that is so cool looking.
That is pretty cool. Also, by the way, I forgot to mention to you earlier when I was going on that bike ride earlier, because I did 6 miles. I can't say too many details or I'll give away where I'm at, so I can't get too detailed with it. But there's a there's y'all know these humps in the road, right? There's like the little walkways, and sometimes they like elevate them above the road. It's like a speed hump, but it's like it's elevated so that way drivers realize there's a sidewalk there that people are crossing the road on. It's about a 2 or 3 foot elevation. I was going down the street. There's a bike lane on the street, so I'm going down the bike lane. Still trying to get used to being on the street with a bike, which feels abnormal because I'm not used to that. I'm used to a motorcycle, but this car I hear come flying up behind me. I'm like, I was looking behind me like, is this person going to see me? Because like I'm a little paranoid about being on a bike out here on the street. So they don't hit me, but they go past me going about 40, and there's this like 3 foot like thing right there that they're going to about like jump over. So they send it over this thing unintentionally. I think they were playing on their phone. They sent it over that thing at like 45 or 50 miles an hour. That car sparked. It slammed like the back of the axles and stuff on the ground. It literally lost control almost, and it went swerving all over the place. So I stopped for a second like, what the hell? Are they about to wreck into the city hall over here or something like that? They somehow got control of it again and went on their way. I caught up to them at the red light. The next one, they were in there gripping the wheel with both hands at like the driver's license lesson like type deal, like 12 and 2 and stuff like that. They were holding on for dear life. I'm like, those people almost just wrecked their whole car.
Man, honestly, man, crazy stuff happens in South Salt Lake, I'll tell you. But beyond that, oh shit, I actually told where you're at. Ah, never mind, it's fine. I'm sure that'll be fine. There's going to be no issues from that, right, Matthew?
Damn it.
Damn it! Like, man,
That's
dang
not your
it.
chocolate Carol. Saying South Salt Lake. I mean, that is extremely vague. Also, that's actually pretty good. You did that actually.
Actually, South Salt Lake's right here, by the way, folks.
Yeah.
That's South Salt. I mean, like, I did that deliberately. But let's see. There was this cool bridge, by the way, Matthew, right here. I don't know if you saw this going in the Midway, but it's a little covered bridge right next to the road bridge called Legacy Bridge. It's got this really nice little view of the river that comes through here. It's a cool little spot. I wanted to pull over and look at it, but all the parking was jam-packed with people who were, like, taking pictures on the bridge and around the bridge and everything. Oh, look at that dog. Dude, it's got glasses.
Even the dogs out here are like rolling in it.
Man, this thing is going to go, oh, hello. Like, it's how are you doing this morning? It's like, man, that Salt Lake vibe, man, I tell you. Oh, look at that. Dude, that's really cool looking. That's pretty cool.
I didn't get to explore around Midway very much because I got scared for a minute because it started snowing. There was like a winter storm advisory out or something like that, and I'm like, I don't trust getting caught in this because I got to drive back. So I left quick. I was like, I want to get out of here for like it starts like blizzard weather conditions or something like that. So I left.
You know, I went up there, man, and there was like little tiny specks of snow. Like they weren't flakes. It was like little tiny like dust, like bits of snow that were falling still. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But there wasn't really a lot of snow falling at all when I went up there. I think I went up there like an hour or two after you. But also, folks, there's this really cool little railroad here. And the reason I'm just pointing this out because they had this cool sign in the back behind their place. Oh, shoot, they just put that up, apparently, because it's not here in this picture. But they had a giant Rio Grande sign up here in, like, the Rio Grande font. I thought that was pretty cool, so I was like, wow, that's neat. But this little place actually runs train excursions down, like, way down here, like, past this bottom of the reservoir down here, and then they turn around and go back. So it's a pretty lengthy little trip. But that's a pretty cool deal. And then Park City, I mean, I'll be honest with y'all, folks, Park City just... It wasn't what I imagined Park City was going to be, Matthew. Like, I drove through it, and I was like, I don't know what I was expecting, but I expected it to look a lot more Swiss, and it kind of just looked a lot more like just a generic kind of ski town, honestly.
He wanted it to look like a Western. He came here for a proper Western, and he didn't get it.
But honestly, I was kind of impressed with Park City. But the only problem is though with Park City, it's like it's obviously catering to like the very, very like top clientele, which there's not a problem with that. Like there's a place for everybody. But it's like, you know, unless you're willing to spend some big money or something, it's like I don't know if Park City is really my place or not. It's like it's pretty neat to drive through it though. Like it's pretty neat. But you know, unless you're going there to ski or like, you know, spend some good money or something like that, I'm like, this is not really my thing.
This is actually the intersection that I drove through. And I was just like, I don't know. It doesn't really seem Swiss. Like, where in the world was I dropping down the camera?
Oh, you didn't go to downtown? That's not the downtown. That's just like the drive to it.
Well, where's downtown?
Right down there where it says Park City.
Well, right here?
Put it down in Main Street. You didn't even go to Park City.
Let's drop it down, folks. On Main Street?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, you didn't even go to Park City, man. This is Park City.
Oh, hell, everyone. I didn't even go to Park City. I thought I did, but I was on the outskirts of town. Like, what do you know? Yeah, this is totally different. This is what I was thinking it would look like. And then I drove through everything else down there, and I was like, what a ripoff. And then I left, but apparently I missed the whole town. Oh, that guy's got a gun. Is this a gun store? The claim jumper. Man, that's the president. Hello?
What? I don't get it.
You know, the claim jumper, you know, unemployment's are skyrocketing. No, it's not. Like it's like it's you know, the claim jumper.
I guess.
Well, I mean, you know, I guess that joke flopped. Go ahead and get the womp womp off of that one. I mean, that one really did flop. Like, damn. But like, I mean, maybe some other people got it. Maybe some people did. I saw someone go boo.
I've got to see a boo. You're getting boos here. You're getting tomatoes.
Man, boo. Yeah, I can scare you if you want. But beyond that, we got Fletchers here. What do they do? I don't know. Let's see here. Also, by the way, folks, these are these quote-unquote terrible roads that the Utahns talk about out here. In Alabama, this is passing. But let's see here. The general store, the flight boutique. I mean, man, honestly, I'm honestly right here. I mean, this is a pretty cool little spot, though. I'll have to drive back up. Oh, the post office.
Oh, look at that. That's very expensive real estate for the post office right there. The government's
Yeah,
spending our money well. But also, at the same time, I forgot to mention another crazy thing that happened on my bike ride today. And this will be the last time I talk about the bike rides. I'm sure people were like, damn, he's going on another bike ride story. But yes, believe it or not, a lot happened. It was very eventful. When I stopped to go across the road, to like wait at the cross walk thing to get across, I heard, oh, is it a nice bike? And I said, huh? I turned and looked behind me, and it was this like fella. He said, how do you like that bike? And I was like, it's pretty good. It turns out he was Russian.
Really?
No, I'm lying about that. I just made that up.
I was really like, oh.
There were some British people behind me today. I heard two women that had a very posh London accent behind me. I was like, wait a minute, London and Utah? I was like, what? And I was like, that's unexpected, but it was pretty neat though.
They have good taste. But with that, we're on to the next one.
Also, by the way, some people are saying, "Oh crap!" No, the Russians didn't sneak up on me. That was a joke. But well, really, honestly, a lie. There was no punchline in that, so I just lied. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Crispy, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Crispy, as well for that support. And we do appreciate that. And he did not leave a comment though this time, but we appreciate it very much, Crispy. And we also have a 7 from Putin Puppet, who said, on the Change petition site, petition for UK defensive border monitoring and rear area logistics support to Ukraine.
And yes, that is actually true. That's generally what they do in Ukraine. And a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Destroyer of Planets, who said, do you think the president made a deal in Alaska and the whole show of him being mad was just to con people and to think he was friendly to Ukraine?
It's possible. It's not out of the question, but generally I don't think that went well, because if they made a deal, it hasn't really resulted in much of anything outside of it for about half a year later. So I would say it's like slightly possible, but I'd say it's mostly unlikely. But a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Cynical Signotic, who puts in a 5, who said tactical hex aircraft refers to military aircraft using temporary non-standardized hexadecimal codes for operational security, former Navy and AO.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for sharing that information with us. But I like to think of it as a witch putting a tactical hex on someone. That makes it a lot funny. But I do thank you for sharing that, though, and we will remember that and know that from this point on to shoot out as an interesting fact about what a tactical hex is. So a big thanks to you so much once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $5 support from Piscator Outdoors. And thank you very much, good sir, as well. He said, hey, enforcers. My wife and I are watching tonight, and thanks as always. And also, I study medieval studies. What's your favorite medieval kingdom and why? Honestly, Piscator, I'm no offense, by the way. I'm not saying this to offend you, but I really hated like medieval history and stuff like that. I don't know why, but I have like a really strong aversion to it. It's like one of those things I'm like, oh, I'd rather listen to anything other than medieval history. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if it's because theme of it or something. I don't know. It's just not my thing. So I sadly couldn't name one. But Enforcer, what say you?
I actually got a couple of favorite medieval kingdoms. The Kingdom of Bohemia was a really interesting one. The Kingdom of Burgundy was also pretty cool. And of course, I have to go with my tried and true favorite, the Kingdom of England, because we are, after all, ancestrally British Americans. And I mean like 90% British. So the Kingdom of England is my number one favorite. But I also would say that the Kingdom of Burgundy, which has been completely forgotten to time, and also the Kingdom of Bohemia, which is now the modern day Czech Republic, are interesting kingdoms as well. And before anyone says, oh, you like the Kingdom of Bohemia because of Kingdom Come Deliverance, Kingdom Come Deliverance made the Kingdom of Bohemia cool to a mainstream audience, but I thought they were cool before that because I knew that they were a pretty significant seat of an elector in the Holy Roman Empire, and not only that, it was one of the largest princely states or kingdoms, you could say, within the HRE, which also made it incredibly interesting from that facet of what they were at the time alone. So honestly, that would be maybe my top three, but my number one, of course, would be the Kingdom of England. And also, I see Saxon saying you're Welsh, not English. Yeah, but I mean, like our family name came into being literally like just 100 years before the English took over pretty much the entirety of Wales. So we pretty much have always been in the Kingdom of England, although we're Welsh. So I think the Kingdom of England's pretty neat because the Welsh were a part of it pretty much the entire time that my family existed. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And I also have to say, Matthew, maybe you didn't like medieval history because everyone made it so goofy. Like, you know, you'd always hear that stupid music, like they use like the woodwind instruments, and then you talk about they ate mutton and played jousting, and like that's like the lamest sort of like explanation of the medieval period. It was a very interesting time historically. It's wildly interesting actually with like the politics and how everything worked, and the diplomacy and the statescraft and how people's daily lives were. Very interesting time, but a lot of people don't give it justice because they just go to knights in shining armor, jousting tournaments, and of course, medieval war. And it's like, that's just really lame. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Planting, who said, donate to your local food bank, listen to the bros to stay positive, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support. And donating to the local food bank is always a great thing to do. It's very civic-minded, and I have to say that's a very good idea right there. And I thank you massively for the support. These days, food banks are truly banks with how much food's costing. Like, you could probably go and take out a loan with the amount of costs of food that are in that thing. But still, a massive thanks to you so much once again. And, of course, we will make sure to get one from the live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Spicy Dorito, who said, if something were to happen to Putin, how much longer would the Ukraine war continue?
Probably not that much longer. I think that anyone who takes charge of Russia at this point will probably get the understanding that the war has to end, not because the Russian public doesn't support it, but because it's just completely infeasible to keep fighting. So I think if Putin died, it probably would only last maybe another 6 months or less before it rounded out and completely concluded. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And also, I saw Daniel say, jousting was pretty intense, Enforcer. It was, but that's like the only thing people bring up about the medieval period was like, oh, jousting was a thing. And it's like, yeah, it's like, but still, you know, it's like, you know, the medieval era wasn't just all about like some king in a booth sitting there eating a giant chunk of mutton, watching a jousting tournament going, oh, you know, and then like that's basically how everyone explains the medieval period. It was just it was a very interesting time because everyone in the region either was trying to completely distance themselves from the Roman Empire, not really, or they were trying to act like they were the Roman Empire. And it's really a wild time on top of that because there was a time in the early medieval period where we just don't know what happened because there were practically no historical records kept during that period. So about the time of the sack of Rome in the late 300 AD, well, really more so as 425 AD, I think, was when Rome was sacked and pretty much the Western Roman Empire fell. From about 425 AD to about the midpoint of the 800s AD, there basically was no historical records of what happened in Europe. So it's basically a mystery as to what was happening over those several hundred years. There's like fragments of stuff that we know and kind of a general understanding of what it is. But Beyond that, though, there just isn't a lot historically, and that's one of the more interesting things is that it's actually believed that during that period of time, a genocide happened on the British Islands from the Saxons, because before the Brits primarily were known as the Anglo-Saxons, they were just the Celtic English, or they were romanticized Britons. And then apparently at some point during that unrecorded period of history, a whole bunch of Saxons just came over from Germany, either pretty much like intermarried with the Celtic Britons, or they just killed them all, because after the collapse of the Roman Empire, they went from being Celtic Britons to then they were Anglo-Saxons, and we just don't know what happened, because all of the genetic records that exist today from archaeological digs and such show that something just completely changed during that period of time, and we really don't know. Apparently it was a genocide, or there was a huge migration of Germans to the British Isles, and then that created the Anglo-Saxons as we know most of the Britons to be today. So a very interesting, it's like, what the hell happened to them? And nobody really knows the exact answer. And I saw Measure Man say Vikings. Vikings didn't exist yet. That's the wild thing about that. Vikings started to exist around the late 800s, which was around the time that history finally started to be recorded again. So this was before Vikings even, and that's what adds all the mystery to it. It's like, what happened? It's like the Vikings didn't get them. The Vikings would invade Britain later and control fairly sizable kingdoms in what's modern-day England around the late 800s, the 900s, and onwards, but they didn't yet at that point. So pretty interesting. Matthew's hating this because he's like, I hate this stuff. But anyway, so that...
Oh, it's getting late.
It's getting late. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Levi, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Levi, as well, for that support. And he said, I recommend a YouTube channel. And he recommends one of the channels here that we will check out, by the way. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the recommendation for the YouTube channels. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5. And Kyle said, look at Alabaster Caverns State Park in Oklahoma.
Alabaster Caverns. Alabaster Caverns. Oh, it's a cave. It's like the Soto Caverns.
Do they have Alabasta in there? Uh-oh, they got bats.
Man, let's go batty. Like, man, honestly, I gotta say.
He's getting batty.
Man, he's getting a little batty, yeah. But, man, look at that. They're holding it up with mineshaft planks. That's interesting. They're shoring it up. I wouldn't go in there considering that they're having to shore the thing up, you know? Man, dead air is apparently a common theme.
I wasn't much to say about that.
But beyond that, I get it. Well, I mean, you could agree, disagree, but big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Susie B. Create, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Susie B., for that support, by the way. And she said, welcome to Utah. And this summer, you have to go to Lagoon Amusement Park. Honestly, I want to try that place, by the way. It looks pretty cool. I have seen it, by the way, and very good suggestion. But Enforcer, what say you?
And we will make sure to take a look at it because I got that on the bucket list already, and I thank you so much for the recommendation because it's already on the list. So a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a $4 support from Plazat and a $4 support from Marc-Andre Burnett. And thank you very much to the both of you, Plazat and Mark, for that support. And we also have a 2 from Nathan Gonzalez, who said, oi, guys, make my day after day in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words of the support. And thank you for helping us to keep this channel running. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from Gunner and others, who said, get rid of the UN and make USW Empire. Also, rip Caesar.
And I thank you so much for the support. And I would generally say the UN's practically worthless. You could get rid of that and nothing will really change. But I don't know about the rest of it, though. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $1 support from Robert Planting. And thank you very much, Robert, for that support also. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And it's now time, folks, to move on to our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Jody Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabella Garbo, Her Royal Fluffiness, Kush Cobra Turk Sire, and Brian Blairstown. And they said the Morse for today reads, despite the efforts of the unwise and blind, we will have to do our duty. LLT, LSA.
And And that's the sound of money. And y'all got the dead on the nail. That is the Morse code message of the night. I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct, because the latest Army Signal Corps is always getting that correct time and time again, and it's truly an amazing and incredible thing. And so with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the live chats. And considering that we're now overtime, we're going to be gathering 3 live chats and then rounding out the stream for the night. And so we're on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Brian, who said, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 not at all and 10 absolute, where would you say the likelihood of Russia invading NATO territory actually is?
It's basically a 10 out of 10 in the Baltic areas and the Swolki Gap. It's maybe an 8 out of, well, more so a 7 out of 10 with Finland, and also probably about a 9 out of 10 with Poland. Everywhere else is practically quite low, because the only places they would be able to invade are places that are directly along their borders. Their ability to do anything outside of their borders, like an amphibious landing, say in Sweden or elsewhere, is slim to none and would be next to impossible. But I hope that is addressed it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to P. Schultz, who said, how can Ukraine, Europe, and NATO regain the initiative and make Russia react to Western actions?
We could start to be a lot more aggressive, and we could start to assert our interests a lot better. We could supply the Ukrainians with weapons. We could sanction them. We could seize their ships at sea. There's a lot of things that we could do, and we're just not doing them, unfortunately. But those are a couple of the ideas that I could throw out off the top of my head to be having the Russians reacting to us rather than us reacting to them. But with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is like the last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to, let's see here, Maria, who said, couldn't China be supplying Russia now, but when Russia loses, they attack Russia and take back their disputed territory?
I would doubt it. China doesn't have any territorial claims in Russia, and the age of empires and imperial conquest just to take lands to take them is largely over. So I would say that it'd be pretty unlikely for China to start taking massive swaths of eastern Siberia, also including that they would have to pay and finance for the upkeep and maintenance of these regions, and the Russians don't really get a lot out of them. So the Chinese would probably be pouring in about as much administratively in funding as they would be getting out of the regions in return. So it'd be a net neutral, and there wouldn't really be a point in controlling them. So I would doubt that the Chinese are ever going to take territory in large part from the Russians. They will retake the small, minuscule-sized islands in the Amur River that they have disputed with the Russians for decades as theirs, but I don't think they'll go much farther than that. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we've reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to say that we are entirely honored and massively appreciative that so many of y'all have watched this channel. We had a peak viewership tonight of 13.5 thousand people here live at one time, and over the course of the stream, 100,000 people have watched from the beginning to now. We are incredibly honored to know that 100,000 of y'all have been watching the channel tonight and have enjoyed the stream. If y'all have, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to support us on Patreon, you could. It would greatly help us out, but you don't have to. It's all up to y'all. But with that, we will be seeing y'all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if there is enough news to make a short war video tomorrow, or if it looks interesting enough, and God willing, the YouTube algorithm isn't burying world news like it is right now, we will be making sure to make a short war video so that we all can know what's going on in an annotated form in the middle of the day. And so with that, we will see you all either for the short war video or the stream. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Haram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a big shout out to the 100,000 plus people that joined us tonight. A big whopping amount of audience tonight. We appreciate every single one of you for choosing us as your source of news. And we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream, and midday for that short war video, if there is enough interesting news to cover, that is. But in the meantime, though, of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.